That's and you're blurry.
Hey,
Let me
no,
let me
fine.
um hey, you're still blurry.
Okay, well, I don't know why.
All right, let me turn this off. Actually, let me turn this off. Okay, that's YouTube. I think we're live now, right?
I don't see anything. It still says waiting.
Uh,
Let me open up another tab. This is so fun, isn't it? I wonder if it just made you live on your channel on the wrong link. It says you're live. It does say you're live. We're live on a different stream. Hold on. Yep. Oh, yeah, we're live. We're just on a completely different stream.
wait, we're live on a different stream?
Mm-hmm.
What?
Yep. And why am I blurry? Hey
Okay.
guys, we're here.
Is there anybody in the chat? I can't see it right
Oh,
now.
there's people in the chat.
Okay, so I'm looking at the one on my phone, the channel that let's see, and that's the live chat that nobody's on, that everybody's on. So it says we're live, or it says I'm live. I don't get this.
Hold on.
Yeah, it says we're on a completely. Oh no.
Ugh, my camera gave out. Hold on. This is crazy.
Okay, so this
I'm
is
gonna have to
the.
jump off, Pete, and try to jump back on because whatever happened, my camera gave out.
Okay,
Dude.
okay, no worries.
Okay,
Yeah, no
I'll be
worries.
back.
No worries. Bye.
Bye.
Well, greetings and salutations to the 310 tribe. If you guys can see me and hear me, give me a thumbs up. And I'm trying to see if I could pull the chat up on this. Here it is. Chat. And then you have there's a delay between what I'm saying now until the time you guys get it. It's about 15 seconds or so. Okay, I should not. Yeah, my audio video is good. Now I'm going to wait for Lauren to come back on. Um, all right. Well, greetings. Monday, today's program, Monday the 13th. Lots to talk about today. If you could tell by the my art that I had on, I have the today's topic is going to be over Elon Musk and his potential role going forward. There she is.
Hey.
All right, gotcha. So today I'm on with Lauren Caron, and before I hand the reins over to her, I'm gonna just introduce a brief monologue and talk about kind of what the gist of today's conversation is going to be about in a little bit more detail. So we were at a crossroads of sorts. You know, we've arrived at this time period where there's unprecedented technological advancements in ancient prophecy, you know, colliding into each other. So it's a synthesis of sorts talking about what we see in Revelation versus what we're seeing today. And I've used this phrase a lot, the world of Revelation 13. Are we seeing that today, or are we seeing it being built today? And I would argue that we are seeing it in its final stages of being built. So we live at a time right now where humanity and technology are beginning to blur together. And this is where the man of the hour, this guy Elon Musk comes into the picture. He's arguably one of the most either gifted or talented or with the best visions in innovation of our current generation. I'm going to list out of things that he's been involved with, but some of the things that we're seeing him involved with are interesting. And let me just say this, that the technology that we see, the book of Revelation doesn't go into detail about what specific technology we have, but what it does talk about is technological capabilities. And those technological capabilities are what we see um, uh, being developed today. If we get a guy like Elon Musk, he's been involved in a number of different ventures and companies, from SpaceX to Starlink. And these just aren't businesses. I mean, these are instruments that are going to reshape the world we live in, from connecting us globally to connecting us to machines to transforming how we pay for things, the financial world that we exist in. All of that's being shifted, and he is a huge part of that. And I don't want to say, and I'm not going to say that Elon Musk is the false prophet. That's not my point here. I'm not going to say he's the Antichrist. None of us are going to know that until that time comes about. But what I do think is that he is laying the groundwork for all of this stuff to come about. And if we look at everything that he's been involved with, we go from he started his first business venture in 1996 with a program called Zip2, which was an early internet city guide software for newspapers. He was involved with PayPal from 1992 to 2002, which obviously is moving us toward a cashless society. SpaceX from 2002 to present, and space exploration, and ultimately, I think his goal is to colonize Mars. Um, Tesla 2004 to present, electric vehicles, renewable energy, autonomous driving technology. Solar City, which was 2006, it merged into Tesla, again using the solar energy as its means to promote sustainable energy. OpenAI was involved that in 2015 with the development of artificial intelligence, and in his mind, ensuring AI benefits humanity. Neuralink from 2016 to present, which is the brain-machine interface technology aimed at merging humans with some type of AI. The Boring Company from 2016 to present, it builds infrastructure and tunnel construction for transportation solutions. He bought Twitter, which is now called X, and it's the world's largest social media platform. I think it's bigger than the one in China, but I'm not 100%. And then Starlink, which is a provides global satellite service by launching thousands of these satellites into space. That basically every part of the world is going to be covered with bandwidth. And then the Hyperloop, which is it's conceptual now, but it's to develop high-speed transportation in vacuum sealed pods. How does that correlate with Revelation 11 and 13 particularly? Well, in Revelation 11, we see the two witnesses that are killed in Jerusalem, verse 9, and that everybody on the planet can see their bodies laying on the streets for 3 days. How does it tie in with Revelation 13? Obviously, the mark of the beast would be the big thing here, where it is tying uh, or putting technology into the human body. And
Mm-hmm.
then same thing with PayPal, Tesla. That's our PayPal in particular with the cashless society. Obviously, there's a lot more cashless digital currency than simply PayPal. But I think PayPal was one of the first, if not the first one, to begin to do this. And then Starlink again opens or enables global surveillance. So not only does it give internet access to the entire world, but it could also be used for global surveillance. And it would give sort of a omnipresent observation or surveillance capabilities to whoever controls it. And then lastly is the AI portion, which seems to tie in with the image of the beast, that when the beast gives breath or life to this image, it seems to speak and have some type of sentience. So, with all that said, lots to talk about today. Welcoming back Lauren to the program. Good to have you back on, Lauren. And I always enjoy your programs on YouTube and Instagram. I think I catch you more on Instagram than anywhere else, but it's always good to listen to your perspective on things. So, one, how have you been? How was your Christmas? How was the weather where you live? And we know there's another major winter storm coming up next week. So any thoughts? Do you want to move down further south? I'm thinking about moving south to like the coast or something down the Rio Grande Valley or something because uh it's just getting too cold for me.
That's so
So
funny. So, do you know that I'm originally from Texas, Pete?
from the hat and your accent, I
Kind
gathered
of
as much. I
gathered.
just
Yeah.
where.
Yeah, so originally, all my family lives in Dallas, except for my mom. Like my family moved up here when I was 7. My dad thought it was for a job offer, but it turns out my mom was weeks pregnant, and my brother's left ventricle never formed in his heart, so he needed a heart transplant, and that was God's real plan. And my brother, to this day, still has the most perfect heart transplant match in history from a guy named Dr. Bray, who was the heart surgeon here in St. Louis. So that is why we live in Missouri. But you know, anybody from Texas can attest to this. You can take the girl out of Texas, but you can't take the Texas out of the girl. So, or anybody else for that matter who lives in Texas. So I'm still a Texan at heart. But then Lance and I moved to Florida back in 2017, and we lived there for almost 4 years. When the world went crazy in 2020, we decided it was time to hightail it back home. Florida just truly wasn't home for us either, and people just started to migrate down there in just droves also, because at the time it was really only the free state in the union. So we moved back to Missouri at the end of 2020. And here's the crazy part. I hated, and I do mean hated, winter when we left Missouri in 2017. And now it has become one of my favorite seasons, which sounds nuts, but it is. I love it. So fall is definitely my favorite season now. But I went
Mhm.
from being a full out summer girl to kind of hating the summers, and now just becoming that girl who enjoys the fall and the winter and can kind of find the beauty in every season. Spring is probably my least favorite season, only because I feel like now I've developed allergies, and that's not always fun. So there's that.
I hate I hate spring because of all the. I think it's my least favorite because of all the storms.
Oh, see, I
I
love the
mean, we live
storms.
in
I do love that. But yeah,
Tornado Alley. We've
Tornado
had two
Alley is not fun.
tornadoes touch down here, so I'm
Yeah.
like,
For sure. I've got some friends who live out in Oklahoma, and I could totally see Lance and I moving to Oklahoma. That would be cool, mainly because we have a lot of just connections there. But my girlfriend Jess Jackson calls it Nader season, and so they watch all the Naders. So yeah, but I love storms. I mean, I grew up storm chasing with my dad too, so not like physically, but just paying attention to the weather. So I kind of a weather nerd. I love it. It has not been. It's been a wintry mix of craziness. We don't usually get wild storms like snow wise in Missouri. We can get a hefty amount of snow sometimes, but this past week with the ice and the snow, we had about a foot and a half of snow on the ground here in Missouri in my area, which I haven't seen that kind of snow since we moved here in 93. We actually had thunder snow last week, which was crazy. I haven't seen that since 93 or heard it since 1993 when we moved up to Missouri. So it's a little wild. So yeah, but I don't mind it. My car has seat warmers and stuff, so as long as I have everything to stay warm, I'm good.
auto start. That's a must to have.
Yes. Yeah, we do have
Yeah,
an automatic start. Yes, after we
yeah.
had to get that new car after the other one got totaled, and God just blessed us with the honestly, it was a total miracle thing of how we got the car we have, and it's amazing, but it has all the bells and whistles, and that's definitely a couple things that we actually prayed for. So pretty cool.
Awesome. Well, that's
Yeah.
good. Well,
Yeah.
hey, I monologued and kind of laid out kind of the overview of the program
Yeah.
today. I'm gonna let you take over and kind of just you can start wherever you want to start, and then
Okay.
we'll just go.
Okay, cool. Well, I have a lot of notes today, guys, and I do have Pete's live pulled up in the chat too, so I can hopefully see things as we go. But I think the first place I really wanted to start was just Pete and I were kind of talking like, what are we going to talk about? Because there's a whole lot going on right now, and I know it's not lost on anybody that if you are somebody who is paying attention to all of the news or at least a good portion of it, you're probably pretty overwhelmed on a day-to-day basis because there is just so much that is just kind of teetering right now. And in the last week alone, like I've just been like, some days I just have to go, I can't even look at anything today. I just can't do it. It's too much. I need to put my phone down. I need to just not. But at the same time, if any of you guys are a part of my channel, and you can find me at Certainty for Uncertain Times on YouTube, the number 4, Certainty for Uncertain Times. You guys know that I'm spending a lot of time talking about 2025. I believe this is a really pivotal year. I think the incoming administration is going to make this year very pivotal. And I feel like the people that are being set into power in place and that are coming into those positions are going to be very pivotal. I agree with Pete. I've heard him talk a lot about, what he thinks is going to happen. And none of us expect for the NWO acquisition, if you will, to slow down. We expect it to speed up. So in saying that, I kind of want to start with a little bit of introduction, if you will, to some of you guys know these names. I know everybody knows who Elon Musk is. It is amazing to me how he has really taken the forefront over the last, several months to a year, how he's pretty much a household name now. Not to say that he necessarily wasn't before, but he's becoming even more of a household name now than he was. But Peter Thiel is another guy that Pete and I were wanting to kind of tie together today with Elon, as far as creating this Revelation 13 infrastructure. As you guys well know, if you study Bible prophecy, a lot has to be in place for this beast system to come into full fruition and for us to be in a place where we have a one world system and a one world government and everybody's, tied to the matrix, so to speak. And we are really seeing that come to place. So for starters, here's some shared influence in history for you guys. Both Peter Thiel and Elon, they do claim to be conservative guys. Now, it's interesting to me that they've flipped from, I like to call them flip-flops, but they flipped and flopped from one side to the other, and they do consider themselves to be conservative. Now, I would say that they're probably not conservative in the same manner that many of us are, coming from a biblical worldview or a Christian worldview. They're conservative in areas where we might be able to stand and link arms with them on some of the elements of conservatism that they have, but it's more of like a, I don't know, Pete, would you call that more of like a liberal conservatism? Is that even a word? Is that something we can meld together? Maybe it's more centrist. I know I hear a lot of people say,
Yeah.
but we know that they don't come from a biblical worldview. They probably don't have a lot of socially conservative values. They're probably more coming from an economic conservatism more than anything. They say they're for limited government, but their ideas and the things that they're producing are not going to produce a limited government at all. So I don't see that, but they do claim to be conservative. As Pete mentioned in the monologue, I got to hear most of it trying to figure out what was going on with the camera, but they are co-founders of PayPal, which it does lay the groundwork for cashless transactions. And, I don't want anybody to be afraid necessarily of some of the stuff that we're seeing, because I'm sure, I can't speak to this, I am a little bit too young, but I'm sure that whenever debit cards came into play and credit cards came into play, that people who are following Bible prophecy probably freaked out seeing that stuff, going, oh man, we're not going to have cash anymore. We're going to be forced to use this stuff. And how many of you guys go into the local grocery store and use your phone because your debit card's tied to your phone? I do, you know? So I want you guys not to freak out about that stuff, because again, we're not going to be here when the Antichrist is running this show for 7 years, but we really don't know how long we're going to be here in terms of everything lining up to produce that beast system. So, but don't be afraid of some of this technology that's coming out. Yes, we need to have our minds turned on. We need to know what some of this is about. We need to know what some of it is going to be used for. But at this juncture, none of it is going to tie you to some sort of Antichrist system. We don't have a beast right now. So I want to make sure that people get that, because I have seen so much confusion in the last 5 years. Can't believe it's been 5 years now since 2020, but 5 years, people just trying to tie things together because they don't know, or because maybe they come from a different eschatological view. So their timeline is a little bit skewed on how things work, because they don't quite understand the sequence of events the way that we all do, who are coming from a pre-trib point of view. So in saying that, it's so funny that everyone calls these guys the PayPal mafia, which is really, it's funny because they are influencing global tech and finance. It's when you hear that word, I'm like, man, do I really want to be a part of anything where it's like mafia is involved in that terminology? But that's what they're called. Like, everybody knows them as the PayPal mafia. They've been key investors and developers for futuristic and global technologies through Founders Fund, which is Teal's main piece. And that investment has gone, or his investments from Founders Fund have gone into Neuralink, BlackRock Neurotech, SpaceX, Planetar, OpenAI, which is ChatGPT for those who don't know, DeepMind, Stripe, Unity Biotech, and many more. It's just a few. And then Musk's ventures, of course, everybody knows him pretty much, but you've got Neuralink, you've got Starlink, you've got Tesla, you've got others that are shaping humanity's future through AI and connecting people, merging man and machine, as I like to call it, or brain and machine. And I don't know if you guys have seen Elon's tech, where he's actually talked about how Neuralink works and how they drill out part of the skull and they implant this. It's creepy. It's creepy. I will say, even though none of this stuff is going to affect us for the Beast Kingdom, please don't line up to go sign up for Elon's Neuralink. I don't think that's a smart decision for anybody to be making. So if he comes knocking on your door, or somebody tied him comes knocking on your door and wants you to be a human experiment, don't go do that. In saying that, though, they do have the direct connections for Teal and Musk are Neuralink and BlackRock Neurotech. So both Teal and Musk are connected to the brain computer interface. So when you see the term BCI, whenever I first saw this, I was like, what does that mean? It means brain computer interface. Okay. So when you hear that, now you're going to know what it means. And they are connected to that industry, even though they have separate companies. They are both gunning for similar goals, right? And we know this to be true about a lot of these folks who are involved in these areas of going towards globalism. They may have different companies, but their interests are very much the same. Okay. I would liken it to everybody trying to get to the moon at one time, right? So you got all these countries trying to figure out they're going to get there, but everybody's, they're rushing towards the same goal. It's very similar for these technocrats. They all have the same end goal in mind. Why? Because whether they know it or not, and I think some of them are they're very well aware of who their allegiance is to, but whether they know it or not, they are being demonically influenced to produce this kind of technology that the beast system is going to need for the beast himself to run it. Okay. Let's see here. Their shared ideology. They both promote tech as a means to save humanity. But as you guys know, the methods that they are going to be going about producing is going to do nothing but enslave humanity. And I think that's probably been the biggest thing for me to watch since we've now seen this new administration coming in is I notice a lot of Christians, and I'm going to talk mainly to Christians on this podcast. I don't know how many of you guys here are just kind of like scoping things out, but most of the time I'll try to remember to refer to, everybody, but if I'm speaking just directly to Christians, I'll try to mention that. But my big thing that I really want Christians to pay attention to right now is whether you're happy about the coming administration that's headed in what, a couple days now? What, we got a week out before Inauguration Day? So yeah, whether you're happy about that or whether you're leery about it, whether you're on the fence, whether you're unsure, what you need to be paying attention to is what is going to be produced out of the people that are going to be tied to this administration, the administration themselves, Trump, Elon, Vivek, all of them, and be paying attention to it. Because again, I know Pete has said this, and I know we had Lee on a couple weeks ago. They were talking about this. Neither one of them expect for the B system to slow down. I don't either. In fact, I think this administration is pivotal to seeing it speed up. And I think this has been part of the plan, is to bring it in through what I have termed light world order. That's what I call it. It's not an original term, but you guys, if you've been on my channel, you've heard me say that a lot. I've kind of said for a long time now, I don't believe that any of this could get done from the dark side, right? Because everybody has been saying no to, Uncle Klaus. Everybody has been saying no to, Yuval Noah Harari, all those people that work for the WEF and that are front and center, that we all know their faces. We know their names. We know their sister companies, their parent companies. We know all that stuff. We're all going, no, we're not going to take it. But if you put people in a place of power that are stating the same things, just maybe using different terminology or different branding, and we like them because they're on our side, that's a way to get it done. It creates a level of deception that most of us are probably not paying attention to. And that's kind of what myself and some other guests that I've recently had on my channel, or have had on my channel for quite some time, have been talking about for quite some time. Because this is the area of deception where I don't want Christians to get carried away because, we got the country back or we have all these things. It's that the system that is being put in place, y'all, it can't slow down. And how do we know that? Well, the Bible talks about that, we will be seeing things ramp up towards the end. And while we hear, everyone, all the teachers talk about birth pains and stuff like that. And I personally have not had any children, but I do have some people in my life who have. And I know that when a woman starts going into labor, ain't no stopping the birth of that baby. That baby is coming. And we are seeing that, you guys. And I don't know about y'all, but I feel like the word convergence, we need to find a better word. Because I was talking about convergence in 2020. I was talking about convergence in 2021, 22, and 23. And I'm not kidding. I feel like this last year, I'm like, I don't even know. We need a better word for that because it's more than that. It's like the convergence of all, right? And as my friend Keegan and I were talking, she's a moderator for my YouTube channel, but we were talking the other day, but all means all. So we're seeing the convergence of all of these things come into play. You've got your weather events. I don't know about you guys, but I don't even feel like we have a real 24 hours in a day anymore. I feel like time is going way too fast. All of these different elements that are happening. We've got all the things. And again, I don't really want to get into the politics of it all. I used to love politics. Now I just loathe it. But the problem is that we have to be involved in what's going on because we're seeing the politics help produce the beast system. But the politics are crazy. You've got everything that's going on in Israel, and you guys all know this if you're Bible prophecy buffs. Who cares what's going on here? Who cares what's going on in the United States? What's happening in Israel? Well, Israel is on the verge of just every war possible, and there's so much going on there. It's just like we can't even keep up. Then you got the third temple, and you've got the red heifers. You have all these things, and none of this was happening 10 years ago. Correct me if I'm wrong, Pete, but I don't think we had anywhere even close to anything like what we have now. And I think that's why you see a lot of people who have platforms, whether they're pastors or they're like me and just like the Lord put on their heart to start a channel because this stuff is getting real. We're all just going, yeah, we just can't have much time left. I was even talking to Josh Peck the other day when he was on my channel. I was like, Josh, because we were talking about CERN and we were talking about all the tech and all of that stuff. I was like, Josh, I just don't even think we can get much further down the road without being past what the book of Revelation alludes to. So what about that? Like that to me is a big sign that we're so close and near to Jesus coming and saying, I'm taking my bride and getting on out of here. So that's kind of just a little bit of an opener of Peter and Elon and how just kind of their shared technologies and their focus. Before I go any further, Pete, do you want to chat on that for a bit? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I was just thinking of a word that we could probably better describe the convergence. So we've been using convergence for a long time. So maybe uh, exponential convergence or
Yeah,
synchronized convergence, or I don't know. I'll have to play with that, but that's a fascinating idea to be able to.
we need to
Hopefully, I don't know if
coin
somebody's
something.
already coined a phrase, but yeah, there's a number of different tech companies. I was looking this up too while you were talking.
Yeah,
So Neuralink, Synchron, is
I
my
have that
understanding,
one.
is the main competitor to Neuralink.
It
So
is.
Neuralink, they drill through the skull to embed the whatever technology into the brain. Synchron goes through your artery, and they send it up that way to the brain, and it embeds in the brain that particular way. But there's paradromics, precision neuroscience, brain gate, emotive, and Neurable are all companies, and that's just the main ones. I'm sure there's hundreds of other ones around the world that are doing the same thing. The Chinese, Russians, I'm sure have their own brands that are doing this. But there is a huge push to put technology into the human body. And when
Mm-hmm.
I was in the army back in 20, I think it was 2010 or maybe 2009, the place I was working at, we were planning 20 years into the future at that time. And one of the things they were looking at was putting the watch on a person that could monitor their health, their heart rate, perspiration, heartbeats, all locate GPS locations,
Oh.
etc. We know that as a Fitbit.
Or
I
an
think it
Apple
first came out
Watch.
as yeah, and then
Yeah.
later as an Apple Watch. But we were looking at that about I don't know, 5 to 10 years before that ever came out into, because we had folks in Iraq and Afghanistan, and we wanted to be able to track them real time. And they would, if they were wearing this technology, if you remember the movie Aliens back in 85 or whatever, that little thing that they would carry around, or that little watch they would put on their wrist, and then you could track them wherever they were. Well, we were looking at that too from the Army standpoint. Really, this is where it really got to get seriously, or the Army got serious about doing this technology, because of the we wanted real time information, because a lot of the information we were getting, there was a delay, there was a lag of anywhere from 5 minutes to an hour, to get that, especially when you're working in remote places like Iraq and Afghanistan. So we were looking at that years before Fitbit ever came out,
Right.
let alone Google Watch or Apple Watch or anything. So I definitely see that this is where everything is going. But yeah, I one of the you said something earlier too that I wanted to jump in on, but
You
I can't
interrupt me,
remember what.
dude. You gave me free reign today, but
Uh,
I A talk fast and B talk a lot. So just interrupt me.
I don't know. Last time I did this with Carol too, Carol Vay. I felt like
She's
I
in the
just
chat.
dominated the conversation, and I didn't want to do that this time,
You're all
because
good.
you're my guest here. I want to make sure that you and every guest that I bring on is got ample time to say what they want to say and talk, and because I want to go off of those points as well. But
Cool.
there was something else. What was it? Oh, yeah, okay. What you said about that they're on our side, so it's okay now. But if it's like Noah, your Harari or
Yep.
whatever, then we can say, oh, those are the bad guys. But these guys politically align with us or culturally align with us. Therefore, um, will let it slide what they're doing. So that to me is what we're seeing play out right now. Is most of my audience is familiar with the Hegelian dialectic, where you have a
Yes.
thesis, a antithesis, and then a synthesis.
Well said.
So we are watching the synthesis kind of unfolding now. And the antithesis was all the things that drove us to this decision to accept digital currency, to accept technology in the human body, to accept all of these things. And then the thesis obviously is going to be the original, that the starting point
Yes.
is that where they wanted the synthesis to be. They want us to be cashless, they want us to be connected to a system that they can control, et cetera, et cetera. So I would argue that Elon Musk and Peter Thiel, I don't know too much about Peter Thiel outside of Palantir and PayPal, but um, I think they've got to know. They've got to know that
Yeah,
what the Bible says. But
they do.
they watch Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan read Revelation 13. If Joe Rogan knows, then obviously Peter Thiel and Elon Musk would know what the Bible says about this. So the fact that they're continuing moving into that direction tells me either they don't believe it, which they think it's just a metaphor, or it's a it's not something that they would take seriously, or that it's so far into the future that we're hundreds of it's beyond their lifespan, right? So, to me, they're doing this in full knowledge of
Yes.
what the Bible says. They at least have to have a cursory understanding of what Revelation 13 says about putting technology into the human body. But go ahead, continue.
They do. And I actually believe they are willing and witting participants to all of this because there is a sector, and I've talked about this on my channel too. Matt and I actually have gone into this. But there is a sector of people, what you guys need to know, that are very proud Luciferians. Like, if you don't know that, they're proud Luciferians. So, what they believe is that our God, the God of Abraham, the creator of the world, he is the enemy and that Lucifer is out to destroy him. And they believed this battle of Armageddon is going to happen. They believe all this stuff, but they believe that their guy, Satan, is going to win because they believe that in the garden, Lucifer did the well, not in the garden, but when Lucifer fell, he did the amazing thing by stepping away from this tyrant that is our God. That is what they believe. And so I firmly believe, especially when you dive into, and you have to be willing to go down some rabbit holes. And I know not everybody's willing to do that, but you do have to be willing to look into some things, or as I like to say, look under some rocks. And I know sometimes it's going to challenge your paradigm. But when you start digging into these people, and I'll get to this in a little bit, I'm going to give you guys some stuff from an essay that Peter Thiel wrote in 2015. But when you go down the hole with these guys, you can see that they are very tied to New Age, New Age, and then occultism on top of that, which New Age is occultism. I don't think a lot of New Agers, I think there are New Agers out there who are very well versed in the fact that they are actually serving the dark side, if you will. But I think a lot of them get into New Age because they're looking for, self-worth. They're looking to heal themselves. They're looking for all these different things. And New Age has the answers.
Mortality.
Yeah, exactly. And New Age has those answers for them. And that's why it's important for us as Christians to be very well equipped to have answers for them, because we have answers about all the weird stuff going on. We have answers about the alien crafts that might show up on the White House lawn. We have all those answers, but a lot of Christians, they aren't taught that stuff in church. Maybe you go to a church that, your pastor teaches topically and he plans a 7-week 7-week message series on, Philippians 4:13, and that's how y'all do church. I would challenge you to find a pastor. If you can't step away from that church, find a pastor who's going to help you walk through the Bible expositorily, if that's a word, because you need to understand the full mosaic of the Bible from Genesis through Revelation. And that's where I feel like a lot of people get confused. I also feel like an improper balance on eschatology, meaning understand that it is the pre-trib rapture. There is going to be a tribulation. It is going to be 7 years. We are coming to the end of the age. I feel like all of those things, when you're not in line with that, that's also how people get very confused. It's how people can see what's going on as Christians and they're just either aloof because they have no eschatology teaching at all at their churches because their pastors won't touch it with a 10-foot pole, or they have an improper eschatology, which causes them to get very confused about the time frame that we're in. I've had people commenting on my videos lately saying, we're just in Satan's little season. And I'm like, nope, no, we're not. That's not how it works. He doesn't get a little season. If you want to call a little season the 7 years of tribulation, we'll call it that, but we ain't there yet. They're obviously
Yeah.
talking about, other things with NAR and all of that stuff. But jumping back into what we're talking about today, so some of the tech projects supporting the B system. So again, just focusing on the main ones that Teal and Musk are into. Pete kind of already mentioned this, but I have Neuralink here from Musk. So this is a brain-computer interface, so that BCI term that we talked about, which is going to be designed to connect human consciousness with AI. Now, how many of you guys are seeing all these weird things out here right now? You got people dating women that are AI, right? And the AI women are very beautiful. I won't lie, they're very beautiful, but we have all this stuff going on. We have people, teenagers talking to Jesus, they think is Jesus through an app. We have all this different stuff happening where humans are, starting to get connected in a relational way. We'll say it that way with AI. I think there are some great technologies. I don't know if any of you guys listen to Shane. He comes on JB Hickson's podcast sometimes and talks about tech. I don't believe that tech is inherently bad. I also don't have an issue with certain tech pieces that some people might have issues with. Some of these things are very helpful right now for a lot of us. But again, it's all about having that knowledge base of like, well, where is this going and where is it leading to and where are we at now on that timeline? So that's Elon Musk's, and that could potentially be a precursor, obviously, to the mark of the beast. With wanting to, I personally think that this tech is what it's being created for. It's going to have to be a part of the beast system. Again, we didn't. Pete, you said something about y'all were looking at technology 20 years ahead of when y'all were talking about what you were talking about for something like an Apple Watch, right? Well, now if they're
Yeah.
20 years ahead of us right now, what does that even mean? Like I
Yeah,
can, my brain can't fathom that.
I think they're fully, honestly, at the root of all of this thing. I think they are fully invested into some type of way to create immortality, so that they never
Absolutely.
die. And
Absolutely.
and whether we look at Musk ventures into trying to get us to Mars in case the Earth is blown up or whatever, or all of this stuff, it just seems like it's moving in this direction where it kind of feels like they want to go back to what we would call the golden age
Yep.
of or what the New Agers would call the golden age, which was what we would call the antediluvian times before the flood, where people were living for hundreds and hundreds of years and presumably were taller, smarter, stronger. I think when Adam, I mean, this is just my opinion, but I think Adam was and Eve were probably 7 foot tall, very intelligent, like, I mean, just like
Yeah.
incredibly intelligent. Um, Obviously they had some type of what do they call it? Not psychic, but they had the ability to communicate with animals of all
Oh,
kinds,
I
even
believe that.
animals that
Yeah.
even animals that don't have vocal cords, etc. But
Mhm.
they're able to communicate with them in a way that the animals understood them and they understood. Obviously, Eve is
Talking
talking
to
to
a
a serpent,
serpent. Yeah.
right? So when we look at it from just a humanistic logical standpoint, we're like, well, how does a serpent talk? It doesn't have they don't have to communicate with words. They can communicate with thoughts and stuff. So uh, and before I hand it back to you, but one of the things that Musk said just recently that caught my attention was somebody was asking him about these not I'm sorry, it wasn't him, it was Stephen Greer. But what Stephen Greer was talking about, he mentions Musk in this. He was talking, or the guy that was interviewing was saying, well, if there is some type of major disclosure event where these aliens reveal themselves before inauguration day here next week, how do we have the means to communicate with them? And Stephen Greer was talking about how Musk was working on Neuralink and maybe some type of technology through that direction, that path that we would be able to mentally or whatever the term is, be able to talk to them without using our words. So I certainly think
Telepathically.
that telepathically, thank you, that they were looking at other ways to communicate. But when you open that Pandora's box, that also means that they have the ability to see your thoughts, know what you're
Yep.
thinking, because they can look at the brain patterns, brain waves, and all that stuff's being fed into an AI program that's infinitely smarter than all the smartest people on the planet. And
Hmm.
so, but continue.
Yeah, and I'll just piggyback off that. This is all the more reason, guys, if you have not seen Brother Tyler from Generation 2434 and Brother Pete here talk about the Final Four. This is why I've promoted that video so many times for the last 4 years,
Mm.
because I really do feel like we're just at a pivotal point. And if you guys know anything about New Age and the occult, 2025 is their year. I had an article that is on my YouTube video from Matt Shepherd for the King. He's on my channel a lot, but I had an article tied down in the description box, and it was all of this crazy nonsense about what these people believe for 2025. They believe their Messiah is coming back. He ain't our Messiah, obviously. There are so many crazy things. And Keegan, my moderator, sent me the same article a couple days later, and it actually had a grand Freemason symbol on it. And I was like, girl, this is the same article that I was referencing with Matt in my live. It just isn't from a Freemason. But all this, they're talking about the end of a Yuga, not yoga, Yuga, YUGA cycle, why 2025 is a pivotal year. It's crazy, you guys. And again, I don't subscribe to any of those things. These are all esoteric things, but this is what these people believe. And what I'm going to show you today as we keep talking, you'll be able to see that Elon Musk and Peter Thiel, this is where their hearts are at too. This is the agenda that they're serving. And the last thing I wanted to hit on, Pete, is you mentioned about, being the last humans. Jared Kushner also made that comment. I can't remember if the video was recent, but he said something to the effect of that he believed that we were the last humans. Like he believes we're getting ready to merge man and machine. And he's also a big prominent, outspoken person to see the third temple rebuilt too. So all those things are they're very interesting. So back to Neuralink. So what you guys have to remember is that some of this is going to represent a shift. Josh Peck put it this way. So let me try not to give an exact quote of how he said this, but this was on a video I watched from him a couple weeks ago. But he was talking about AI technology and should we be worried about all of it? And again, it's good to be aware, but not all of it is bad. And he made this statement about how, for instance, if he goes to get LASIK surgery, is LASIK surgery about restoration of his eyes back to what they were, or is it about glorification, giving him the ability to have night vision? So when you start thinking about these technologies, that's how I want you to think about them. Like when you're learning about this stuff, is it about glorification, or is it about restoration? And some of these things, they even try to put together where these are like good technologies. And here's an example. So Pete mentioned Synchron a little bit ago. So Peter Thiel isn't directly connected to Synchron, but it again is that whole brain computer interface field. So what this is it's an invasive brain plant enabling individuals with paralysis to control devices using thought alone. So that's called the Stentrode BCI. So how they're marketing this is they're marketing it to people that have disabilities out there and showing like that they can hear again and things of that nature. But again, where we get kind of like, woo, this is getting weird, it raises those ethical concerns about the broader potential for control. Because again, they're using the inside of their brain. Like I watched something the other day about, somebody actually using this technology who was basically paralyzed, couldn't speak, couldn't anything, almost like a Stephen Hawking type situation. And they were able to use this technology to communicate and put a tweet out on, I still call it Twitter. That's wild. So again, and some people might rejoice in that, going, wow, so-and-so can do X, Y, and Z. I mean, Stephen Hawking was somehow talking through a computer, remember all those years ago. But again, it's just, where is it going? It's going towards a glorification process, which is again all about elevating man to God or past God, man becoming a God, all of those things. So some of the theological implications of this stuff would be, they try to appeal to our compassion for people who might be disabled, which I totally get. Some of those things get my heartstrings. I can't imagine how it would be to, you don't hear your entire life. And now because of the age that we live in, there's a technology that allows you to hear. Have you guys seen those ear pods of that guy going deaf? And now Apple has the ability to have an ear pod that allows someone to hear. It's this commercial that you'll see on like Hulu, and all of a sudden they hear what is going on in the background is very muffled, and it's his daughter playing a guitar and singing, and then he puts these ear pods in and it's just clear as a bell. That commercial kind of gets my heartstrings, because I'm like, I bet that is, if that's a real dad, you know what I'm saying, it gets my heartstrings. But again, they ultimately are going to blur that line between humanity and machines. And as you guys know, again, I think Pete and I have talked about this too on a couple of videos, but I personally believe that when you take the mark of the beast, that is going to make you non-human. There's going to be some element about that is going to destroy your humanity, which is why you will be irredeemable. Obviously, you are pledging allegiance to the beast system. You're saying, yes, I'm on his side, I'm on his team. But there's something about that moment when people, take that mark on their right hand or their forehead that I firmly do believe is going to make them non-human. The second piece of that is that when all of this stuff is going to reflect that pursuit of glorification over restoration, which I mentioned, and it really fits that transhumanist narrative, which is transcending human limitations. And that's what it's about. It's about being better humans. It's about, elevating our consciousness. It's about elevating and vibrating to a higher power of being. That's what all of this is about. And some of that language sounds, nice and rosy and, tutti frutti and stuff, but it's not. It really has dark, dark, dark ties and meanings when you know what that terminology they are using actually ties to. So the other one that we've talked about a little bit is Starlink. So Starlink is a global state network providing internet connectivity worldwide, and it acts as the communication backbone for smart cities. How many of you guys know what smart cities are? Let us know down in the comments. And it creates a system where all devices and people can be monitored and controlled without physical escape. That sounds like fun. So, but here's one of the cool things about Starlink. How many of you guys are paying attention to all the things that happened in North Carolina not too long ago? Well, Elon got some, deliveries done, or at least he tried, through Starlink. And so those kinds of things, it's like, okay, on that side of it, I go, that's a really good use for some kind of technology like that. But again, it plays with our heartstrings, because if you don't know a thing about Bible prophecy, if you don't believe that, we're getting to the end of the age and there is a 7-year tribulation, coming, and I feel like I just feel like I'm beating a dead horse with some of the statements over and over and over again. But we have to, because sometimes it takes you 7 or 8 times to hear something and for it to finally click. But if you don't know those things, then all of this technology that they're doing can seem really, 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 really good on the surface, but we have to understand where it's headed. And then, Pete, you mentioned Planetar. So that's the other one. Planetar is a leader in data aggregation. It's going to enable the governments and corporations to centralize and analyze vast amounts of personal and societal data. And then the other one is that this just recently happened, but I don't know how recent. Time's all relative to me, but it supports military projects like Project Maven. Do you know anything about Project Maven, Pete?
I've heard it
Military?
before. In fact, I think I've talked about it before.
Have you?
But
Okay.
off the top of my head, I can't remember what it was.
Okay, so Project Maven uses AI to locate and target individuals, so humans. And that, of course, raises ethical concerns about surveillance and control. But again, you guys, you probably already know this. I mean, Pete can attest to this. He's been in the military. If at night I've got my shades drawn and no lights on in the house or anything like that, and a military personnel drives through, if they have the certain pieces of technology, they can turn them on and see where my body is at in my home. I
Yeah.
can't get away from that. And from what I understand, I feel like MonkeyWorks talked about this a year or so ago, where it can even see you in the ground. Like if you're in the ground, they can see heat spots in the ground. So all that stuff is there. And again, some of this stuff has been used for good things, but ultimately it's leading to a very, very
They
dark.
they can they can use Wi-Fi to
Yeah.
figure out where you are in your
Yeah,
house. You
absolutely.
know that they can
Yeah.
use Wi-Fi, your Wi-Fi signals bouncing off where inside of your walls of your house. They can figure out where you are.
Yep.
But I let me just I've writing notes down here because I want to make sure I don't forget to go back and address these.
Go for it.
You bring up good points, and that's why I want to kind of piggyback off some of those. When you talk about technology as a tool, I can give you a good example of kind of a micro example of like the Hegelian dialectic, for me at least.
Okay.
A couple of years ago, I started using the AI generators to draw my own images, and the reason I did that was because of all the copyright issues that people were running into. And for years and years, I mean, even when I started writing in 2011, I put a little graphic or something with the article from Mega Letter, and we were just using whatever images were online that kind of aligned with the topic. But then Google and other groups began to really crack down on all the copyright stuff. And I just got to the point where it's like, well, if I make my own images, then it's copyrighted to me, or at least it's not copyrighted to anybody.
Right.
So, I could keep myself out of trouble that way. So that's how I started. That's why I started doing it, because of all the copyright problems.
Yep.
And I know that I can make graphics myself. It takes forever. But the second point was what? Let me go back to that. Technology is a tool. It
Amen.
should
It
just be
is.
viewed as a
I
tool.
agree.
And
Totally
that's why
agree.
people shouldn't freak out today about debit cards or
Yes.
tap to pay, the NFC technology, near field communications. This is not the mark of the beast. And what you talked about, what the mark of the beast is going to make you more than human. It
Right.
does something to you that changes you. So when we think about why Christ came, he came to die for man. He became a man to die for man. he did not become an angel to die for angels. If that were the case, then Satan would have a path to redemption. But he came as a man in the incarnation there in his first advent to die for the sins of mankind. It's something that this Mark does on top of the spiritual component to it, swearing or worshiping this beast. Is it changes you? It does something to you that changes you, maybe in a way very similar to what the Nephilim were, the product of human
Yep.
and fallen angels. There's some hybrid mix. So this mark does something to makes you a hybrid. There, ergo, that you forego your means to salvation. It does something to your body, to your DNA, etc. But
Amen.
like that's why we also know that the 70th week isn't, the whole 7 years isn't, the church isn't in that time frame, because if you're sealed by the Holy Spirit, let's just play one of these. I hear it all the time too. People say, "Hey, we're coming up on the abomination of desolation. We're 3.5 years into the tribulation started
Well,
in 2020 or
if
whatever."
it did,
I
then
hear it all.
it looks pretty good. I'm just gonna say, like, it ain't that hard.
So,
Go ahead.
so when they say that to me, and they're saying, well, the PayPal is the mark of the beast, or digital currency is the mark of the beast, or we're not saying that. We're saying that this is the infrastructure that will lead to the mark of the beast. So, but when they say that we're inside of the tribulation, I say that's impossible, because if I'm born again and I'm sealed by the Holy Spirit that the Bible promises in Ephesians chapter 1, Ephesians chapter 4, 2 Corinthians chapter 1, when you're sealed by the Holy Spirit, let's just play this out hypothetically. If I were a born again sealed Christian and for whatever reason I had to take the mark of the beast, how would I be damned to hell if I'm already sealed until the day of redemption by the Holy Spirit?
It doesn't
It's
work.
a it's an impossibility,
Yep.
a theological impossibility. I mean, it can't happen that way. So the church is removed. So those folks that are inside of the 70th week, the majority of the world's population at this point, when your salvation very much goes back to the way it was in the Old Testament in terms of
Hmm.
you're not earning your salvation. It's still salvation by grace through faith. The only difference, I think, with the is the role of the Holy Spirit in sealing that believer until the day of redemption. That guarantee is not there anymore. So that's why there's a repeated warning throughout Revelation. Hey, if you live by the sword, you're going to die by the sword. Make sure that you keep your keep watch, keep your garments together. In Revelation 14, there's a lot of passages that seem that from chapter 6 on that seem to indicate something about just because you profess Christianity doesn't mean that you're saved, and it
Right.
doesn't mean you're going to be delivered, because if you take the mark of the beast, you're done. So it puts you in an impossible conundrum if you're sealed by the Holy Spirit and then somehow you take the mark of the beast. And that's why I also don't believe children are inside the 70th week. Now, I think children will be born
Yep.
inside the 70th week, but if you were like let's say you're 8 years old right now, and 3.5 years into the tribulation, you'll be at what, 11 and a half? You're still under the age of accountability, at least according to the Bible. And the Bible talks about, it doesn't give a specific date, but we can see examples in the Old Testament that Israel did not consider you a man or an adult until you were 20, or
Hmm.
20 and up, which is why you couldn't join the army. You weren't counted in the census. You weren't able to do a lot of different things. If you were over the age of 20, you had to pay the ransom tax for your sins. If you were under the age of 20, you didn't have to pay that. The people that went into the wilderness, during the Exodus time period, who was allowed into the promised land? It was everybody, Joshua, Caleb, but then everybody under the age of 20 was able to enter in, and nobody over the age of 20 was allowed to enter in.
Right.
Irrespective of whether they believed the 10 false spies, or the negative report from the 10 spies trying to discourage them from going in because of all the giants and stuff in the land. There's no qualifications on why. It just gives an age. It says if you're under this age, you can go in. If you're over this age, you cannot. And that age
Hmm.
dies out in the generation. And what's left is you have the younger folks. It doesn't talk about whether they believe the report or not believe the report. It just gives the age right there. So that's one aspect to the tribulation. But we do know in Matthew 24, at least, that we see that there are children that are going to be born, or at least pregnant, by the
Yeah.
midpoint. So we know that there is children that will be born, but even at that point, at the very oldest that they could be, if they're born inside of day one of the tribulation, when it starts officially, is you would be 7 years old, still
7,
well under
right.
the age of accountability. So, in the
Mhm.
mark of the beast, I don't know, maybe it has something to do biologically. You have to be a particular age or beyond uh, uh, puberty or whatever the case is. You have to have already kind of achieved your kind of final age in order to, because if you try to put a mark or something into a child's hand, let's just say it's a chip or it's whatever, and you are 3 years old, I mean, that thing's going to be gigantic. It's going to be huge on you or your forehead or whatever. It may not even work at a child that age. Maybe you have to be a particular age. That's all
Could be,
speculative stuff. But I,
oh, totally. It could be a parent thing too. It could be like that, like it could be a mom and a dad, or, again, people don't have mom and dads in this scenario, but it could be, a mom and her 5 kids, and the mom takes the mark and she's able to feed her 5 kids, and they don't, you know what I mean? It could be like that. I don't know. Totally all speculative, but it's good information for sure to think about.
another thing you mentioned was the bad eschatology. And we talked about there's a lot of folks that reach out to us, say we're already in the
Yeah.
tribulation right now. Folks, bad eschatology doesn't just affect your opinion on the rapture. It affects at least three other major biblical doctrines, because if you
Yes.
put the church inside of the 70th week, you're already contradicting things within soteriology, the study of salvation. If you put the church inside the 70th week, you're already violating many different doctrinal points within ecclesiology, the study of the church. And then anybody, listen, this is just general advice. I've said it before, but anybody can make the Bible say anything they want it to.
Yeah.
That's not hard. Cults have been doing this forever. Jim Jones did it. Joseph Smith. I mean, you think about every major cult leader and false teacher and false prophet in the world. They can all pick and choose, cherry pick verses to make it say what they want it to say. That's not hard. The hard part is making it all flow together and not contradict each other. And the only eschatological position that doesn't do that is the premillennial, pre-tribulation position.
Come on
Every
now.
other view, whether it's amil, post-mill, pre-wrath, mid-trib, partial
Post trib.
rapture,
Yep.
no rapture, any of those other positions, you're violating other doctrinal things, and therefore your entire theological framework is already flawed and messed up, and that those all lead down bad paths that we aren't supposed to go on. We're able to
Mm-hmm.
be the sons of Issachar, just is a principle, right? Understanding the times in which we live and then taking that information and using that for something useful for us. And we're told in Mark 13:36 and 37 that Jesus that tells us, Jesus commands us to watch. He says, I tell you, I tell
He
everybody,
does.
watch, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if we're watching, what are we watching for? We have to know what we're watching for. And in watching, when you begin to talk about a topic, it generates interest in said topic. And in that interest causes us to wonder and look at, okay, well, what are we watching for? How do we know what to watch for? Then that causes me to dig deeper into the Bible and then pull my head up and say, from reading and look around and say, wait a minute. If I'm in the 1800s, I'm like, well, none of this stuff, it's all Greek to me. That doesn't make any sense to me. How could one person control everybody on the planet? If I were just a logical thinking man at the time, I would just say, well, apparently we're not there yet, because this is impossible right now. You have a guy like Sir Isaac Newton who lived in the 1600s and 1700s, and he, a huge student of Bible prophecy. I'm not going to espouse every position that he takes, but he made an interesting point that in the last days, the study of the end times is going to come back. It's going to cause a lot of clatter and discussion amongst people. But he thought that the second coming would be somewhere in the neighborhood of like 2060, which is not too far off from where we are
No.
today. We're what
Yeah,
is
yeah.
that?
My math is terrible without a calculator,
Yeah, I
so
don't know, 30, 40 years
something
off,
like that.
35 years. So
Yeah.
not too bad when he made that in the 1700s,
Yeah.
So
Yep.
another point that you brought up was the Jared Kushner talking about the last humans. I think he knows. I have a leery eye on. Look, I'm a rabbit trail a little bit. I love your programs. I love Matt, your friend Matt. I love been watching his stuff lately.
Yeah.
JB Hickson. I'm sure other folks, Zach and others who are not big fans of Donald Trump.
Right.
I don't think Donald Trump is the Antichrist. I'm just
No,
flat out.
none of us
Yeah,
do
yeah,
either, by the way. I can
yeah,
speak for all of them. None of us do either.
yeah.
We are concerned with what he's doing, but he can't be the Antichrist, folks. And I get people telling me that all the time too. I'm like, do y'all even read your Bible? Come on. He cannot be the Antichrist.
But what I do think is I think Donald Trump is the man that God is using, just like God used Cyrus, God used Pontius Pilate, God used every leader that we see in the Bible, human Gentile leader, to accomplish his will. So I think Donald Trump fits into that kind of
Mhm.
category. But what I do think is there's a lot of people that have jumped on his coattails when they saw that he was going to become president. And then, again, the third time now, is that they're jumping on the coattails and riding that gravy train to success. And so I would look at Musk, Vivek Ramaswamy, who I enjoy listening to them argue and debate and reason. I like the way they talk and the way they reason through things. But I think they're jumping on this bandwagon here because they know it was the winning ticket, right? And so not just I think Trump's victory allows for a lot of these other coattail hangers to come on and then begin to influence or try to influence his decisions. And but ultimately it all drives, just like you said at the very, very beginning, it's all driving us into this one direction. And there's no the Bible said, look, the Bible said that Revelation, the world's going to look like Revelation 13 at some point in our future. There's no escaping that. There's no turning to the left or right or picking a different candidate. We're going to get there regardless of who's president, regardless of who's a prime minister, et cetera, et cetera. That's what's going to happen. And we can trust that. We can take that to the bank if banks are still a thing at that time. At that time. But the last thought I had on this was, um, oh gosh, where did I put it? Uh, somebody had mentioned in the chat Daniel 2:43, and
Oh,
that's
is that the
the
iron and clay where they'll mix together and
yeah.
they yeah. L.A. Marzulli quotes that verse all the time because he fully believes there's going to be a massive infiltration with
Yeah, it says,
Nephilim.
as you saw
Yeah,
iron mixed with ceramic clay, they will mingle the seed of men, but they will not
will
adhere
not
to one
cleave.
another, just as iron
Hmm.
does not mix with clay. I honestly think that I love LA. I listen to a lot of his stuff and a lot of his DVDs and stuff. If we think about what do they call that? Abductions and these
Hmm.
interactions where people are that feel like they're taken by these beings onto a ship and experimented on and stuff. I think what they're doing is they're not they can't. I don't think they're going to go to the try to recreate the Nephilim like they did before the flood because they saw what happened to those angels. What I think they're doing is they're trying to mix and match technology to see which is the best thing that fits and works with. And ultimately, that data that they create from that will go to the mark. What
Hmm.
will become the mark of the beast down the road. So between what the humans are doing and what the fallen angels are doing, I think what they're going to hone in and perfect this mark to such an extent that it can extend human life, which we see is becomes problematic once these demonic locusts are allowed to come out in Revelation 9. They can't, people aren't dying, but they're suffering terribly. I think that it answers a lot of questions to a lot of other things. Why are there abductions? What's their end state? What are they trying to do? And if you read Daniel 2:43, as Ellie has done decades ago, and trying to warn people about this, is that this is where that technology I think is leading. That mark of the beast
Yeah,
is going to be, if it's that big, it is going to be the pinnacle of all human technology. It will be the pinnacle of human angel technology to basically uh, change a person from a human, from a Homo sapien to something else, Homo sapien plus, or I don't even know what they call the next generation. Somebody in the chat knows what it is. The next generation of humans is, but that's that little chip, whatever that thing is going to be that thing. And ultimately, the ultimate reason why it exists is to eternally damn the person that puts it in their
that's it.
body, and that they are irrevocably divorced from God forever, that they will never be able to be reconciled back to God. So
Yeah.
back to you.
Okay. So I wrote down a couple things too. So I know you watch Josh Peck's program. I had him on Friday, but he was talking about the last Jubilee, and that starts in 2026 and runs through 2075. So when you mentioned Sir Isaac Newton and he said 2060, that's interesting too. So the point is that we're living in the last days. I surely hope, y'all, that it ain't 2060, 2050. I don't even want to be here to 2040. So like I really don't. I mean again,
23.
I really yeah, right. That's what I think. I think it's yeah. So at any rate, I wanted to mention that. So now let's go into a couple of other things about smart city. So I know that is the talk of conversation right now because I'm sure all of y'all have been watching what's going out on the left coast this past week. But let's talk a little bit about what smart cities are. And I'll just allude to that with the left coast and won't say anything else about that. But you guys get what you guys probably are picking up what I'm throwing down. But these cities are built on AI. They're centralized infrastructures that integrate personal devices, public resources, and surveillance systems. They're supposed to offer efficiency and innovation, but they're also going to create a system where access to resources and services can be restricted to that grid. And they're going to be based on compliance, right, with the centralized mandates that are going on. Now, here's the thing. I know that, like you said, Pete, DJT is not the Antichrist. I, however, differ from a lot of people. I do feel like he is a witting party to what is going on. And I believe that from the research that I've done, and I don't expect everybody to go down those rabbit holes, and I certainly don't expect everybody to agree with me, but from where I'm at and what I've seen, he wants the golden age. They were talking about the golden age years ago, even just something as simple as Melania coming out to the age of Aquarius back in 2016. There's a lot of things about him that bother me. And he's for these smart cities. He just calls them freedom cities. And so a lot of people jump on that bandwagon because that's a better name for him. Well, that sounds really great. It's got the word freedom in it, but it's the same thing. And I don't know if you guys know this, but last week he talked about an initiative of $20 billion with a B, $20 billion, as if the country can afford to go into any more debt to put into structure AI data centers. And when I watched his speech back in July, he was really talking a whole lot about the golden age and AI and bringing apart those, or bringing in those technologies. And that's where Elon Musk started coming into the picture even more, and him connecting with those people. So those kinds of things are, those kinds of things for me, those are big red flags. And so at the end of the day, for me, what I have to ask myself about any individual that I'm paying attention to in the political realm, whether I like them or don't, and by the way, I'll just say this, he is a far better alternative, far leaps and bounds better than the other alternative. However, I feel like the other alternative that we had, it would have been a lot easier for people to pick up on what is going on because it would have been so in your face. Well, now it's not, because everyone loves him. And he, you know, I remember how easy my life was to live from 2016 to somewhat 2020, right? But the point is that it was a lot easier to live. And by the way, I was involved in his campaigns and all those things prior to me realizing where I'm at now. For those of you guys who don't know, I've said it before, but I was really wanting to dive into politics and get into that realm years ago. I'm thankful I did not. I'm thankful that I'm here, but that was where I was going because I was so passionate, literally cut me open and I would bleed the American flag. So I say that from a place, like, for those of you guys who go, oh my gosh, I can't believe she feels that way. I understand where you are, like, diehard patriot, love the country, don't want to see America collapse. I don't want to see any of those things. I love the freedoms that we have here. And I realize that we are the last beacon here. I get that. But I think what we have to ask, and this is the tough question that everyone is going to have to wrestle with for themselves. If a person that I like and that I'm supporting, are their actions pushing us away from the beast system, or are they pushing us into the beast system? And that's going to be the question that everybody has to wrestle with. So when you're seeing these people come into places of power and they're popping up and they're doing things and bills are getting drafted or whatever's going on in the political realm and in the public forefront, when you see those things, that's going to be the question that I personally think you have to ask. What are they doing? And is it supporting or running us from the beast system? Because my big thing is that if somebody was anti this agenda, they would not be associating with all of those who are running headfirst into it. So that's my thing. So back into the smart cities. So this is about Teil and Musk. They both want smart cities. For those of y'all who don't know, they do. So Teil's contributions involve investments in Praxis, which is a crypto-powered city-state. And then there's something else called the Seeding Institute. And both of those advocate for tech-driven societal models that are really going to evolve into that whole centralized, controlled system. I even read an article when I was putting together this outline for this show. This was like back in 2000 and was it 10? Might have been earlier than 2010. It showed this, it looked like an AI image, but I don't know if it, obviously it wasn't. But anyway, it was like an AI image of this city that was floating in the sea. And it was just all technologically advanced, but it was floating in the ocean. And it was from something that I had found on Peter Thiel and what he wanted to do. And I was like, wow, that's fascinating, because it was way long time ago. And then for Musk, that's where Starlink comes into play, guys. So that's the global internet coverage that we talked about that can connect every device that is in those cities. And then Tesla, of course, the energy and AI systems that are with Tesla will also help that smart city technology and will be an automating resource that will help with allocation and control. Now, where does that fit in with Revelation 13? Those of you guys who study Bible prophecy already know this. These smart cities could solely function as physical manifestations of the beast system, enforcing economic, social, and behavioral compliance. And again, if you're plugged into the matrix, so to speak, of your smart system, then they like you're going to have to obey it in order to be able to travel outside of it. If anyone's seen the Hunger Games, that's what I think of. I think of like those districts, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
The other movie that I think about, which by the way, this is a really good movie if you guys want to go and watch it. It's called In Time, and it's with Justin Timberlake and the girl from Mean Girls. What is her name? She played Caron on Mean Girls. But that movie is insane also. They have their money system is all based on this ticking time clock that's in their wrist, and they work and they earn more time. Well, if you run out of time, you literally die wherever you are. So it's all about racing against time, but they have a class system. So those that are the elites, the high elites, they have, just infinite amount of time on their watch. That's, and I can't remember if it's on their right forearm or their left. Honestly, I haven't watched the movie in a long time, but I think that was made in 2013, somewhere around in there. But that is a really, really good movie to kind of even show you of like just how if you were in the poor neighborhoods or the poor sections of society back then, you couldn't even get around. Like what little work you did just gave you a little bit of time to be able to move on to the next thing. And Justin Timberlake lost his mom because she ran out of time. They couldn't get to each other enough to do, like, they had an arm movement where they would touch wrists and spin their wrists, and it would give that person their time. So anyway, it's a really cool movie, but it kind of goes over just some of this stuff, and it might even get your wheels turning on some of the things that we've talked about today. So it's a really interesting concept. So that's my thoughts on smart cities. I feel like we're going to see more of that. And obviously, if anybody has been paying attention to the left coast, there is an initiative for 2028 for the left coast over there. So I have really been paying attention to that. And yeah, so that's all I'll say because I know we have to be wise on here. But again, all of this stuff, when we see these types of disasters, I think the first thing you got to do is start scouring and seeing, where this is, like, what's tied to this. Are there minerals here that's in the ground that the government could want to help improve AI? Like, because a lot this stuff sounds crazy, you guys, but it's not. It's really not. So that's what I have about smart cities and technology and that piece. So fire away with what you've been writing on that before we go forward.
Yeah. So, okay, smart cities that we know ultimately that's where they're going to go. We mentioned LA, Lahaina,
Yep.
even Neom. And speaking to Neom in Saudi Arabia, I got contacted by an individual that's familiar with the place personally. I'm not going to reveal anything more beyond that, but when he's back in the U.S., John Holler, myself, and
Yeah.
he will do a personal live stream together, and just he's going to give us up to date like what's going on with Neom,
Wow.
and he's already sending me pictures and stuff, so it's pretty cool to
Oh,
see that. But
really?
more to more to follow on that. But I'm
Okay.
going to respect his privacy and anonymity and just leave it at that.
Mhm.
But I will be doing a huge deep dive into the not too distant future regarding Neom. Um, Tyler and I are also working on this program, a project on Mystery Babylon and the United States being Mystery Babylon.
Mhm.
And I used to hold this position, but I think the more that I've dug into it, the more I'm kind of convinced that we probably are.
Yeah,
And
I feel like we are too.
yeah, so that's coming. And I think I mentioned this last time, but we do want to put an article with all of the rebuttals, questions, answers, diagrams, all of that stuff will be put together as either a read ahead or something you can read after you watch the video, but it'll
Sweet.
go with that program. Pretty fascinating stuff. And I met with Tyler on Saturday and we just had a great conversation about it and talked about it since then. So that will be coming. But one of the things that Tyler had mentioned to me about, we mentioned about freedom, it's not, the United States is built on the Constitution, and the Constitution and the Bill of Rights that focuses on freedom.
Yep.
And you and I like freedom. You like
Yep.
freedom.
Yep.
Everybody likes freedom, and this is not freedom isn't a bad thing. But I think what Satan and all these other groups, what they do is they pervert that freedom And so what I think we're seeing is more of a Psalm 2 type freedom where we want to throw the shackles off that God, they view the constraints that God puts on them as shackles. They want to throw those things off
Mm-hmm.
and um and do whatever they want and live however they want without any kind of accountability from a higher power. And that's what Luciferianism really is, kind of the meat and potatoes of that. Is it's basically do what you want, is
Yep.
the whole of the law.
That's a
The whole
Lester
thing from the
Crowley.
Satanic Bible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lester Crowley 101, man. Yeah.
So when we talk about politics today, and you have on one side, on the left side politically, Democrats are very much promoting authoritarianism, tyranny. All of their legislation are incredibly draconian. That's the one extreme on the other side, and then the other side that we're on now with Trump and Vance and all the big tent, this tent that used to be the Republican Party is now very, very big, and it's including a lot of different groups. But the one thing they agree on is that we want freedom to do whatever we want.
Yep.
If you're a log cabin Republican and you're a homosexual Republican, you support Trump because he promotes economic freedom. But that log cabin Republican doesn't want anybody to tell him how to actually live his life. If you have the other groups that are, everybody's kind of piling in because they don't want the other side. They don't want
Right.
North Korea, which is
Nope.
what the Democrat Party is offering.
So
Hey,
true.
we'll turn this into North Korea. Nobody
Right.
wants that.
No.
So, so we're caught in between a rock and a hard place, and it's impossible to get a biblically sound um, uh, uh, president or political leader at that level of president that holds to those views. It's impossible because of how complicated things have become politically and how diverse as a society we've become. 100 years ago it wouldn't be that hard of an issue, but now it's just impossible to do that. We're so divided today. We're more divided today than we ever were in the history, even including the Civil War.
And
The
that's
Civil War
intentional
had,
too. It's
yeah,
intentional.
yeah.
Yeah.
I call it. I don't know if I coined this phrase. I'm sure it's been around before me, but complexification. Things have become so complexified over the last 100 years that it's impossible without compromise. You have to compromise your moral principles in order to hobble together a political party that even stands a chance to win any kind of offices. You can win at the
Yep.
very local levels if your community is pretty homogenous. You're all kind of think along the same lines and you're all living together. But once you spread that out across a nation the size of the United States and possibly even into Canada or Greenland or whatever, it's going to be impossible to make everybody happy. So they have to compromise on everything, including religion, morals, etc. So ethos, all that stuff gets compromised, and the one thing that they're going to rally around is freedom. So everybody likes
So
freedom.
one
So
thing we
hey,
all
let's
have
just,
in common. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
yeah, and success, and that's really the success of MAGA. It's not um, Donald Trump per se, because he's not the greatest speaker in the world. He's not the greatest philanthropist in the world or the greatest thinker in the world. I think he is incredibly um, perceptive on knowing which way the wind's blowing. Right. And so when you look at 2016, when he was doing the debates in the Republican primaries, he said the one thing that we weren't supposed to say out loud, and he started talking about the border and making the border an issue. And the minute I watched that debate, the minute I watched that, I said, he's going to win because that's
Mm-hmm.
what everybody's thinking, but nobody wants to say it out loud. He broke that fourth wall of politics and addressed the taboo issues out loud. And same thing with 2020, same thing with 2024 and 2024. I think it's a combination of things, but here's the thing about Trump. If you listen to the things he's saying today, he's been saying that since the 1980s, even though he was a Democrat. He's never really changed his position on trying to make America successful. I think his intentions are good. And I would even say the same thing for like a guy like Musk in a way that he wants to do this to benefit mankind. However, it is going to come at the cost of our humanity, and that is going to open the gates of hell, allowing for the mark of the beast, whatever this little technology thing is, a technological device that it is, whether it's a quantum dot tattoo, electronic tattoo, some type of RFID tag that gets put under the skin, or whatever it is. it's going to end up with that because Satan is hijacking everything that we do. And one of the here's the one thing that Tyler and I have been talking about quite a bit. It's that if if America is Mystery Babylon, right? Think back to the statue that we just read about in Daniel 2, that
Yep.
multi-metallic statue that Nebuchadnezzar saw and dreamed about, and then had Daniel interpret and tell him what it was, what it meant. That whole statue is Babylon. The head is Babylon, right? And yeah, it goes through different iterations, right? It goes through Persia, Greece. These are the major kingdoms of the world, right? It's all Babylon, head to toe. I mean, if same thing, and Satan is doing this primarily because it's mimicking what Christ did with the church. Christ is the head, we are the
Mm-hmm.
body, but we're all in Christ. All of these kingdoms, all of these governments are in Satan. They're inside of this Babylonian system that is contrasted with the city of God. There, it's the tale of two cities, like from Dickens' novel. You know, the tale of two cities. You got in his story, it was I think London and Paris, but in this case, it's going to be Jerusalem, the New Jerusalem, and Babylon. Babylon representing the epitome of human greatness, obviously aided by fallen angels. But the that's the it's all Babylon, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so
Yep.
think about good something good being perverted into something bad. Marriage. God created it that a man and a woman come together, they become one flesh, and they create a family. That's how God designed it. Any other alteration to that is a perversion of that. I'm not saying that if you're a single mother, you're part of Satan's plan. No, that I'm just saying that Satan will pervert marriages to break them apart, so they are not a nuclear family, right?
Mm-hmm.
In Genesis 8 and Genesis or really Genesis 9, when we have the Noahic covenant, what does God create? In this, it's a changing of this dispensation. And one of the changes that happens in Genesis 9 is that God allows mankind to govern mankind. If a man takes another man's life by his life, it's going to be required, right? Same thing with an animal. If an animal kills a person, you kill that animal. So that was a change from the dispensation just previous to that. Now,
Mm-hmm.
this necessity or this need to self-govern, if we live in a small community and one guy kills another guy, then that guy, and it was murder, right? It wasn't accidental or anything. He murders his life is then forfeit. Now, Satan takes this idea of the human government, this process that we see beginning to emerge from the Noahic covenant, and he corrupts it. By not even 2 centuries later, we have the Tower of Babel. And ever since then, Satan has been corrupting and perverting every government that's ever come about, every kingdom, every empire. And don't take my word for it, just look through history. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's self-evident, and that is the culmination of what's going to happen here with this technology. Trump means well, he wants to do well. I think a lot of people with Trump mean to do well, want to do well. There's only one guy in his whole team that I know of that has sound a sound theology, and it'd be a guy like Mike Huckabee, who's now the ambassador to Israel. Which that will be interesting to see if there's any type of discussion of carving up Israel or doing something to Israel. So I think he will push back on that. At least I would hope he would push back on that. But he's surrounded by people that are not looking at the present situation through biblical eyes. They're
Yep.
looking at it from a very humanist point, a humanist perspective. So, and what does the Bible say? That there is a way that seems right unto a man, but that leads to death, right? There are
Mm-hmm.
things that seem right to us, that seem logical, seem normal, but they are going to lead to death and destruction. They are not what God intended. So when you look at what the way God does things, sometimes it doesn't make sense. Why did God pick David to be the next king of Israel over his brothers? He was like
Yeah.
the smallest, youngest, most insignificant of them all,
That's
and
why.
yet God chose him.
That's why.
Why did God choose me?
Right.
Why did
Yeah.
God choose? I mean, why he does what he does, he has his reasons, and there's a particular plan in place that's been in place before the creation of the world, so we can trust him in his plan. I'm just saying we're going to try and apply some type of a logical, humanistic type of a solution to something. that ultimately gets hijacked by Satan, and that ultimately ends up with the kingdom of the beast, the
Hmm.
Antichrist, the mark of the beast, etc. So, all right,
Absolutely.
I've blathered on long enough. Go ahead.
No, you're good. No, I think you and I see a little bit differently eye to eye, or I guess we don't see eye to eye on Elon and those guys because I definitely think their intentions are nefarious. I mean, I remember
They might
Elon's
be. They might be.
his Halloween costume is literally like I think
Oh,
it's called a
yeah.
devil's champion, and he had an upside down cross on. His mom is a Satanist, so he's very open about those things. But again, that like I said earlier, a lot of people that are wrapped up in New Age and occultism, there is a sector of people that isn't clear, what they're wrapped up in. But I don't think these guys. I think they are wittingly they know what they're doing because I believe that they firmly think that our God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, is the tyrannical, thumb down hammer God, and they want to beat him. I do think that. Now I'm not saying that
Well,
about Trump. I have no idea.
the
But
thing
go ahead.
I think with Musk, and to your point, because I'm not disagreeing with you.
Yeah.
I just I wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt, but
Oh, for
I
sure.
honestly I think he thinks Christianity, Christ, salvation. I think he thinks that's all a joke. It's all a joke
He
to
might.
him.
He might. He very well might. He's.
Watch his interview with Babylon B, and they present the gospel to him. He's like,
Mhm.
whatever, maybe,
Yeah. But I mean,
and it's
he's.
just kind of like his whole attitude about it. It seems like whether it's an upside down cross or a normal sided cross or whatever the case is, he thinks it's just kind of a big joke. It's not like he doesn't believe it at all. Like this, you might as well be saying, Santa Claus is going to come back at the second coming or whatever. That's just kind of his view of it.
Mhm.
I think he's very humanist, and he very well may be Luciferian. He may very well believe all that. I just don't. I don't know that personally. I think you and I talked about this about his nanny or whatever. I
Mhm.
just don't know enough about her story, her credibility, all that to come out and be like he
No, I
is
don't either.
absolutely.
I don't
I
know
don't
that
know.
either.
I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. I'll just say this: he does not believe the gospel. He does not believe the Bible, and he may think it's a joke. He may not think anything about it at all. He just may not think about it.
Yeah.
He's just going to do what he's going to do. But Satan is going to use him nonetheless, and it's very much like the Matrix. If
Oh,
you're not
yeah.
unplugged from the Matrix, you are you're going to get turned into an agent or whatever. You're
Yeah.
very much under Satan's power and control to
Yeah.
manipulate and do
Yeah.
whatever they want to do with you. So
For sure.
good.
And I think, a good key to look at too with people is like look at the symbolism. He wears a lot of the symbols. He's obsessed with Egyptian culture, the gods.
Yeah.
Memphis, if you guys know anything about what he's doing with Memphis and that whole thing, he wants that to become a god. Like, I mean, it's just there's all those different things. So when he says things like that, and when I see some of the stuff, like even the Keck thing he did on X a few weeks ago, where he changed it to the frog, he already changed it back. But that's even a nod, by the way, to the 17 letter movement that was really popular, right? That's where, I started looking at things was through that lens. So all those things can't be coincidence to me, and there's so many spider webs that connect different things. I just, like I said, I just don't think that he is innocent in that. I think he's in that realm. But it's time will tell, time will tell, and we'll be able to see as we start, marching into, if we're still here, and we start marching into this administration and see how far it goes. So the next piece would be universal basic income. So he is a major proponent, Musk is, of UBI. And this
Yep.
is obviously,
Yep.
you guys know what UBI is, but it's the suggesting that a solution for a job displacement, is going to be caused by AI and automation. So we need to have everybody on a UBI system. And I think Pete, you and I were just randomly going back and forth on a comment the other day, and you mentioned something about UBI coming before regional. I'm sorry, central bank digital currency, and that could be the
Yeah.
case. So, but he's a very big proponent of that. So again, I asked the question: is that toward the beast system or is it away from the beast system? So it's those things like that that I have to ask myself on that stuff. So obviously UBI is going to create that dependency and compliance and centralized system that we're all talking about, and then of course that aligns with the infrastructure for a CBDC. So we'll see where that goes. But that's the big one for me on him, is that he is really, and UBI just, that seems like such a Democrat platform to me, to be wanting it, or let me say it differently. That seems like more of a socialist or
Socialist.
communist. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That, you should just
His
insert
was
Democrat in that, but
wasn't his dad? His dad was a huge socialist, right?
I don't know.
Elon's dad
Actually
was
don't
a
know that.
yeah.
Somebody in the comments
Maybe it
might.
was his dad was something somehow in Canada and was part of some type of a socialist political movement there. And one of the the big things that they were promoting was social credit scores. And this was
Oh,
back in the 60s or whatever, 50s. I don't know how long ago, maybe the 70s, but very, and I don't know if it was Matt that was talking about this, but somebody had pointed out that his dad was a socialist, and I went through that rabbit trail, and yeah, he is. I mean, and so a
mhm.
lot of the things that Musk talks about is it seems like it goes in that direction towards the social credit score. And same thing with Bill Gates, right? If you think
Ugh,
back to Bill Gates' father, he was big into
eugenics,
eugenics,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
and you see how that's shaped Bill today in terms
Oh,
of the policies and things that he's trying to do around the world with medicine and stuff. Is I won't even call it medicine, whatever
no.
chemicals,
Yeah.
but it's very much into eugenics, and that's
Mhm.
impacted him. I think this whole philosophy of his father also is impacting Elon Musk as well. So
Yep. Yep. So then the next one would be the philosophical and theological critiques that I have. So here's some interesting stuff about Peter Thiel. And Peter Thiel, the reason why, we've talked about him, but he's the big guy behind JD Vance. So this is why I feel like his stuff is really important. So he had this essay, I guess, that he wrote called Against Edenism back in 2015. So again, guys, against Edenism, that would mean he's against Eden. Hello. Okay. So, in other words, in the entire article, and Pete, I can send you this article if you want to link it down in the description box later on for them to go
yeah,
read themselves. But here's basically a summary. So, it's no return to Eden. Humanity cannot revert to the simplicity of Eden. Civilization's evolution demands that advanced technology is needed to be there to sustain billions of people. He has the future culminates not in Eden's like a pastoral simplicity, but more in here's the words he used, the city of God. What does that sound like? The city, I go back to Augustine on millennialism, right? And that would be a vision of divine order, progress, and eschatological hope. He also has like technological advancements is going to be essential to avoid a zero sum world of resource scarcity and survival, which would enable growth and flourishing. He says that the postmodern culture fosters distrust of technology, often portraying it as dystopian, and that's not really true. But they are focused on an enlightenment era. And by the way, enlightenment is capitalized. Anytime you see that, just know that somebody who is capitalizing enlightenment, that's new age thought, that's occult thought. And then, of course, the big thing with his Judeo Christian outview, he basically tells Christians that they just need to get over it and accept that we're not going to be able to go back to Eden. We need to get on board with all the technology and push forward because that's where everything is going. So, what I have here is unlike atheistic materialism, Judeo Christian thought emphasizes mastery over chaos under God's providence, aligning science and technology with divine purpose. But for him, he sees progress in science and technology, and that serves God's larger plan, advancing order and human flourishing. And then, of course, basically seeing technology that it can contribute to somehow rolling back chaos. So he sees more of it just bringing about the kingdom of heaven on earth, is how he wrote that in the article. So it's really wild. Basically, at the end of the day, here's an exact quote that I have for him. But at the end of the day, he's basically surmising in this article that we are just going to become these technologically advanced, human bot things. And again, it's the golden age, guys. If you've been listening and hearing that terminology, it's really pushing to that. So here's the exact quote that I pulled. Science and technology are natural allies to this Judeo-Western optimism, especially if we remain open to eschatological frame in which God works through us in building the kingdom of heaven today here on earth. I don't like that language at all, in which the kingdom of heaven is both a future reality and something partially achieved in the present. So he basically believes in raising people up to God's level, making man a God, and that tech is also needed to produce God's plan on earth. And like I said, he uses enlightenment, so that's very new age the way he mentions it. But a lot of this really goes back to even dominionism, post-millennial thought, by the way, which post-millennials are so excited about where things are going right now because they think that it's a good thing. And then, of course, kingdom now theology, and he talks about us being co-creators with God. So there's that God complex again. So that's what I have on that with him on the whole his like theosophical ideas.
and here's let me I mentioned this earlier because you mentioned it, but
Yep.
bad eschatology or faulty eschatology leads to bad outcomes. So when Augustine wrote City of God, obviously Augustine, he came out of a Gnostic culture there in North Africa.
Yep.
And in Gnosticism, the flesh is bad and the spirit is good. So there's a huge divide between these two issues. And for Augustine, he could not see how uh, God would return to this earth after he had been crucified and all the terrible things that Christ had to undergo here, and how wicked and evil man are. He
Mm-hmm.
just could not connect those things back together. So he writes the City of God. The Roman Catholic Church takes the City of God and builds their own eschatological platform off of that, which ultimately leads about 100 and 200 years later to the Pontifex Maximus, the leader, the first kind of real pope of the Roman Catholic Church was in about 605 AD. I can't remember the guy's name off the top of my head, but he's like the first official pope. Not the Catholics obviously think that Peter was the first pope, but that doesn't even work any
Oh,
kinds of way. But
I have a book that
but
talks about that. Oh, it's under my
60
desk. Go ahead.
605 he comes on, but there that's why the Pope has this title of the the Vicar of Christ. He is
Mm-hmm.
ruling vicariously for Jesus. God's ruling in heaven. The Pope is his man here on the earth. So when the Pope sits on the throne at St. Peter's Basilica, I think it is, and when he speaks sitting on that throne, he's speaking ex cathedra. He's what he says, what comes out of his mouth is direct from God through his mouth out to everybody, right? And so that lines up with this idea that we have to merge religion and human government together here under a human, which we know humans can be corrupted, right? And then fast forward a few centuries, you get this idea that this pope now can dictate who goes into heaven or who doesn't. This is where the idea of indulgences comes in, the idea of purgatory, et cetera, et cetera. And
Mm-hmm.
then the church becomes insanely wealthy. I think they're still one of the most wealthiest organizations on the planet.
Yep.
But then you fast forward a few centuries from that, you get a guy like Darwin comes along. Then Darwin proposes the origin of species, saying that man wasn't created by God, Adam and Eve were a myth, but rather God maybe set something in motion, and that we evolved from lower life forms into higher life forms. So the idea that of heaven on earth, right? That human government can arrive to that status, that humans can evolve. These are all things that feed into um, off their eschatology, right? This all feeds into this idea that we have to evolve into the next evolution of mankind, and this is where technology comes in, and this is where I feel like Peter Thiel and Musk and others have this green light to go ahead and just do
They
whatever
do.
they have to do to get us to that next level because, well, hey, here's an existential threat over here. You got Skynet developing over here with AI. We have to be able to combat that. So again, Hegelian dialectic,
Hegelian dialectic. Yeah.
antithesis, synthesis,
Yep.
all it's just repeating over and over and over. And so bad eschatology leads to bad outcomes. And so
Sure does.
uh yeah, but something you said too earlier, I feel like there's a I feel like if you mentioned earlier about, or we were talking about, what's his name? Sir Isaac Newton,
Yeah.
saying
Hmm.
that he thought that the return would be by 2060.
Yeah.
It can't be that late. If it's by 2060, every person on the planet will be marked up with something. I mean, we will
So
not even be.
that's exactly, that's my thing. That's why I'm like, no, that's what I was getting at. That's why I was, when Josh and I were talking the other day, I wanted to ask that question about tech because with how the problem is like, it's not like tech is just this stuff is coming out and then it takes 5 or 10 years to develop it into its full um, outcome. Look at what Chat GPT alone has been able to accomplish since 2021 of November 2021 when it was launched and where it's at now. It's insane. It has just
Everything. It's in
I
everything. They're
I
putting it
know.
in all your browsers, everything.
I know. And so, and again, there's helpful things. You can find a piece of information pretty fast. Those things are great. I can create a really fun recipe that tastes exactly like a restaurant that we love, like this. That's awesome. But like the point is that we can't be getting too much further down the road where that technology isn't going to be introduced into different things. And I know Billy Crone has even talked about like they're trying to put mRNA in the animals we're buying from the store, for the meat that people eat. They're putting it in your plants. They're putting it in, people are out there, building their own gardens trying to survive the apocalypse out in their backyard, and the ground from the water is filled with crap that we don't want in our body. So the point is that I agree with you. That's why I feel like we cannot be like, again, I am really looking at this year with big old eyes, but I can't see it going far. Go ahead.
Man, you just hit the nail on the head right there. There is so we are getting corrupted from every
Yes.
different direction. So the foods we eat, right?
Yep.
All the GMOs, all the
Yes.
bad junk that they put in the foods, all that stuff. That's one thing, right? The clothes you wear.
Yes.
If you love Lululemon, you're getting what do they call it? Microplastics in your body that or whether it's permanent. It's like in your body forever.
Mm-hmm.
You can't get rid of it. Um, uh, Everything, fluoride in the water. I mean, everything you can think of is being corrupted to the point that if humanity goes on much longer, it, it it's going to be very bad. It just for example, take the rates of autism and all these things that seem to have just exploded over the last 30 years. It
Yeah.
cannot be a coincidence that we're seeing all of this chemical stuff being introduced into everything we eat, everything we touch, everything we wear. It's we're being polluted with it, and there's hardly any way, unless you're Amish or you live off completely off
Yeah.
grid somewhere. I don't see how you can escape the pollution of just modernity hitting us on
Yeah.
every form or facet. We don't even know right now. I mean, let's say hypothetically we're going to be here till 2060. I don't believe that, but let's just say that we were. What if we found out 10 years from now that Wi-Fi is incredibly cancerous or it's whatever,
Right.
you know? And we've been just drowning in it. And not even if you don't have it in your house, your neighbors have it, your
Yeah.
both sides of your
They're
houses,
exposed
it's being
everywhere. Yes.
blasted through the airwaves, the sky. I mean, there's no way to escape all of the stuff that's being thrown at us. And it's if you don't have Christ and if you don't know how all this ends, I would be incredibly angry, frustrated, terrified,
You ought to be.
bitter, all of
Yeah.
the gamut of things. But
Mm-hmm.
we know that this is not going to go on indefinitely. I think that Tyler and I had done a lot of work on the Final Four, but not just us. Even if 2026 comes and goes, we know we're in that season. Like
We
we know
are.
we are very, very close to it. So
Absolutely.
that's that to me is part of the blessed hope in terms of like there is deliverance from this. And you and I, we have it pretty good here in the United States. I think anybody
Yeah.
watching this right now has it pretty good because you have a phone, a laptop, you're watching
Mm-hmm.
this somehow, you have internet, you have electricity. I, I think about the Christians in China, the Christians, how much
Mm-hmm.
more can they take? How much
Oh,
longer do they have to suffer for and let me just rabbit trail really quick on this one little point
go
because if I
for
don't
it.
say it now, I'll forget it forever.
Go.
I it irks me to no end when people try and say that the church has to go into the tribulation, the official 70th week, not just trials and tribulation, but the 70th week, the 7 year 70th week, because they say, well, the first half, or they try and make it sound like the first half of the tribulation is man's wrath and Satan's wrath, and then the second half is God's wrath. No, if you want man's wrath, look at the last 2,000 years of church history and
Amen.
the fact of read Fox's Book of Martyrs. Look how many Christians have been persecuted, killed, and tortured and beaten and had everything they worked for stolen from them, taken from them by the government, by the Catholic Church, etc. We've undergone 2,000 years of this already, and if people don't think the wrath of man is that bad, I would say, hey, raise your hand and go volunteer to be a missionary in North Korea and see how
Mm-hmm.
long you last there doing that, and then tell me how bad the wrath of man is, because I can tell you the wrath of man can be incredibly terrible, can be
Agreed.
incredibly bad. No,
Yep.
what's starting with the 70th week is that Christ takes the scroll from
Come
the right
on.
hand of the Father and begins to open the seal. He's the only being in all of creation that can do that. Nobody else can do that. Now, that doesn't officially start the 70th week. What starts it is the covenant we see in Daniel
That's
9:27.
right.
But somehow those two things coincide either right before or right after. They kind of start around the same time. They're synchronized in that way. But the point is that the wrath of man is not any laughing matter. We've been seeing it now for 2,000 years. And I would say
Absolutely.
that since Satan is running this planet, Luke 4:4-6, or Luke 4:6, or if you want to go to 1 John 5:19, Satan is running this planet right now. And
Hello.
he has got
Yeah.
all the kingdoms. He can give it to whoever he wants, and he's going to empower whoever he wants. And so I just I, it's bad. It's bad here. It's incredibly bad everywhere else in the world. But the fact is that we've been undergoing the wrath of man for the last 2,000 years. What's coming from the first seal to the last bowl is the wrath of God, and
Yep.
that will culminate with the battle of Armageddon, second coming of Christ, when Christ, the rightful ruler of this planet, the rightful leader, the rightful king of all creation, will finally take over and demonstrate to humanity, demonstrate to the world and to the angels what a rule under his leadership would look like for 1,000 years.
Yeah.
Now we know at the end of that there is a short season. We aren't told how long that is. Um, your guess is as good as mine. I don't know how long a short season is, but Satan is loosed from the abyss. Presumably, all of the fallen angels with him are loosed from the abyss, or they're freed up to come and do whatever they're going to do for that short season. And that final rebellion is squashed almost as fast as it starts. So, and then from there, we go into eternity future. So, okay, back to
Agreed.
I want to ask you this though. Let me ask you
Go.
this.
Yeah.
We mentioned at the very outset all the different things that Musk is involved in, all the different companies he's involved in. I I kind of have a sneaking suspicion right now that he may already have some type of he's either possessed and has some type of demon giving him all this information and energy to do everything he's doing, or he already has some kind of technology inside him, or he is just surrounded by an incredibly competent team of A-listers that are successful in every endeavor. Let me read the Daniel 11:36-38. It says, "Then the king," and I'm not saying that Musk is the Antichrist, but he could be working for him or as a false prophet. He could be one of the 10 kings. But
Yep.
this was talking about the Antichrist himself. "Then the king shall do according to his own will. He shall exalt and magnify himself above every god, shall speak blasphemies against the God of gods." And you mentioned his Halloween outfit that he had and the upside down cross, the Antichrist and stuff. He's mocking it, right? He just thinks it's
Pretty
a
much.
joke. And shall prosper till the wrath has been accomplished, for what he has been determined shall be done. He shall regard neither the God of his fathers, nor the desire of women, nor regard any God, for he shall exalt himself above them all. You need technology in order to exalt yourself above every God. You need to be in the position of having real power, and that real power has to come. It's not coming from God Himself. It's going to come from Satan, the fallen angel, fallen angelic realm. But in
Mm-hmm.
their place, they shall honor a God of fortresses, which is if you look at the word fortresses there, it's like a refuge. It's a safety, fastness, harbor, stronghold. I think of these like these smart cities, or think about all these massive underground complexes and the deep underground
The
military
Doms.
bunkers and all the
Yeah.
bunkers all
Mm-hmm.
the billionaires are building around the world. Uh, um, and a God which his fathers did not know, which means that this is a new God. It could not have existed in the past. It could not, because every think about all the thousands, tens of thousands of different civilizations and cultures that have arisen since the beginning. And every one of them had some kind of a god or deity that they looked up to, from the smallest indigenous tribe in the Amazon to the Roman Empire and beyond, have all had gods and stuff that they knew. This one says that his fathers did not know. Well, they didn't know technology because this is an incredibly recent development. The last time we had this kind of technology was before the flood,
Yep.
which that whole thing has been wiped out. It was erased from the human record, and we only know what the Bible tells us about it. And he shall but in their place he shall honor a God of fortresses and a God which his fathers did not know. He shall honor with gold and silver, with precious stones and pleasant things. So I just, to me, the fact that this is a God that his fathers didn't know means that this iteration of the fallen angels are going to present themselves in such a way that was never been done before. So I do agree with you that he's fascinated by the Egyptian mythologies.
Oh yeah.
I think he's fascinated by what they represent, like eternal life, or being
It's
immortal, or
very
being
much
powerful, or
immortality. Yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
the blending of human with animals, what we see
Ugh.
represented in the I don't know all the names of it, but like the human with the bird head or the cat
Yeah,
head, or the
yeah.
it's just kind of these
Centaurs, all
chimeras.
that kind of stuff too. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
hmm So
So
what was your
okay,
question?
just do you think he has the technology inside him now, or do you think he's just being guided by a enlightened, what he would think of as an enlightened, like Alice Bailey was
DK,
led
Master
by some
DK.
type of enlightened master or
Yeah.
whatever, or do you think he already put this technology inside of him? I don't see how you can run all of those companies and
Well, he probably has a, I mean, he makes a whole lot of money. So obviously he's going to have teams involved that are going to be very invested in his businesses. But I would say that and this would be a total conjecture, but at a minimum, he's got to be messing with fallen angel technology somehow. Like many of
yeah,
these other
yeah.
people, just like Josh Peck was saying the other day, the people at CERN, what they're trying to do, they're trying to send a message that the unknown unknowns, as the scientists at CERN call them, there could be communications that come back from the unknown unknowns. Well, nothing Jesus based is going to come from that realm that they're trying to talk to. So I definitely think he's messing with, dark forces for sure. So
I
again,
think
time will tell.
I think Josh made the correlation with how CERN has been really heavily invested in figuring out the God particle, or what is it, the Hisson Boggs Hisson, or whatever it's called.
Yeah,
I can't think of
uh-huh.
it.
I think it's
But
but yeah.
if CERN is moving to that level to uncover the building blocks of reality, I think on the other side of that spectrum is that we've got people trying to discover the building blocks of DNA and the building blocks of what makes us human.
Mm-hmm.
And then not just the actual genetics. I think we got to that point back in the 90s with CRISPR, but
Oh
I
yeah.
think from there, I think I would say that most non well, let me put it this way: if unless you're an ardent atheist or an ardent guy that dismisses everything not physical, that most people recognize that we are kind of amphibious in the natures that we are, because we know we have a soul. We have parts of us that aren't tangible, aren't physical. Like my thoughts are not physical. I can't hold them in my hands. You can't cut my brain open and pull my thoughts out. You can pull my brain out, but you can't pull the individual thoughts and stuff out. Love is not a non-tangible in terms of, like, you can't physically put it in a microscope and look at it. All of the other, so I think at least at a certain level that people realize we're more than just flesh and bone. We're more than flesh and
Absolutely.
blood.
Mm-hmm.
There's something other that gives us, and whether you want to call it sentience or something, it's not um, corporal in the physical sense. It's still real. It still
Mm-hmm.
exists.
Yep.
Conscience still exists,
Yep.
even though I can't put it under a microscope. We see how it moves through us and how it moves us to do the things we do, like the wind moving through trees or grass or whatever. We can't see the wind. We can only see the wind when it's blowing through something else.
Yeah.
But we know it's real. We can feel it. So I think at least to some degree, he's trying to tap into that part of the human, and try and even change that part of it. And I think even more than simply just changing our DNA, it may be something to change us in from a spiritual sense, or what he would consider like the soul, the human soul.
Mm-hmm.
And even non-Christians can use the term soul and know what that it means, that sentience, life, whatever you want to call it. When I was a pilot, we'd fly and we'd report into a different a tower, airspace, whatever. I'd say this is tail number blah 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 blah. We got 5 souls on board. That's just 5 living people. Now, if I'm carrying a dead body or something, I would just say, there's 2 pilots, and then we would say we're transporting remains or something. The remains of a body. But when we're talking about living beings, we call them a soul. And so at least there's some sense of conscience, sentience, a soul, whatever that is. They may be tapping in, or the mark of the beast may be able to even alter that,
Could
which to
be.
me is, yeah, is terrifying.
Mm.
I mean,
Yeah,
because
very.
I don't know, it's probably way more complicated than you and I can even possibly hope to dig into, even if we had all day to talk about it.
Right.
Because I don't, you would have to take the world's best theologian, the best philosopher, the best tech person, the best, these would have to be the world's ultimate leaders in each of those kind of fields to even,
Hmm.
I don't even think they could crack that code. But somehow it seems like the mark ties into that. And it may be that the mark, in conjunction with the worship of the beast, closes that loop together to make it work. I don't
Might
know. I
be.
don't know. And that's, speculative, but you're
Of
right. He
course.
may have a team of teams of guys that are just,
He has to, just because, I mean, my husband owns a business, and one of the things that he just needs so much right now is, he needs help with different things. So you get to a point in a business, and we have a lot of colleagues that own businesses that are very, very, very successful. They can't do it all on their own. So they have to have teams that run things, whether that's virtual assistants, or you have a whole team that runs your accounting, those types of things. So with those big billionaires, and I think Elon is now, isn't he one of the richest men in the world? I believe I saw numbers on him the other day, and I just can't even fathom the number of, as far as money
he
that the
is,
dude's worth.
he's the richest, I think.
Yeah, okay. So he there's no, I mean, his board of directors, he's probably got a whole slew of people that work for him in his, individual companies, and, so I'm sure. But I wouldn't want to be working for him. I'll say it that way. And you mentioned this, and then that'll be a wrap for everything that I have, other than one other thing. But you mentioned the word conscious, conscience. And one of the things that the Bible talks about is getting to a place where you have a seared conscience. We don't ever want to do that. And I feel like these people, so this is why it's so important. When you have a check in your spirit that something is wrong, you better listen to that. Because when you get to a place where you have a seared conscience, you don't care about morality anymore. You don't care about any of these things. So, hypothetically, if some of these guys are doing things behind closed doors that are not morally good, they're just like searing their conscience every single time they make a decision like that. And just like Pharaoh, right? There comes a point, God wanted to just help Pharaoh understand what he was doing, and Pharaoh did what? He hardened his heart, hardened his heart, hardened his heart, hardened his heart, and then all of a sudden God was like, okay. So this is why it's also that I've heard Pastor Gary Hammer talk about a seared conscience before. I love him so much. And there's something about that kind of stuck with me, because I start viewing that through the lens of all of these people in power getting to a place where they're making decisions that finally put them in a place, and they're not believers, right? But they're seared conscience is done. Now, that's obviously sociopaths is typically what they relate seared conscience to. But the point I'm making is we have to be really careful about that kind of stuff. And that's where I kind of go, man, do they get to that place where they're just making these decisions and don't really even evaluate the consequences of what they're doing, not just for everybody else, but their own souls. So anyway.
It's kind of like, I guess it's like pride. I don't know if it's pride to
Mm-hmm.
be the first one to do this, or to create this, or to go down in history as the person that invented the telephone, or invented the
Right.
television, or invented the first the atom bomb. I mean, we make movies celebrating these guys like Oppenheimer and stuff, that cracked the code on some groundbreaking thing. And I think for him, it's probably, I think Musk and Teal and all these other humanist type. I mean, one thing we didn't even talk about this today, but Teal, from my understanding, Teal and others, Bezos, are very much interested in immortality, in the sense that
Oh
they
yeah.
want to, they call it anti-aging technology. They want to extend the human life to centuries, and not just to 80, 90 years right
Mm-hmm.
now. And that's fascinating to me, because these are the same folks that forever, not those two individuals necessarily, I don't know if they ever did or not, but guys like them in science, for the last 150 years, have mocked the idea of the Bible, that we could live for hundreds and hundreds of years, just like it talks about in Genesis chapter 5. Even Abraham, I mean, Abraham lived to be 175, Jacob lived to be 130, Moses 120, I think Aaron lived to be 121, 22,
Mm-hmm.
somewhere in there. But these long lifespans, they know it's possible now because of the study of our DNA and genetics. They know it's possible to do that. And I think they're racing to get that stuff done.
Agreed.
So I think for them, it's immortality, it's pride, it's not infamy, but they want to go down in history as the man that did this or the man that did that. So I don't know. It's probably a combination, but Satan is using all those things to accomplish what he thinks is his winning ticket, is to create a kingdom that is God proof, that God
Mm-hmm.
can't touch. And so he's not even just delving into this realm, but he's delving into the meta, what they call the
Yep.
meta world,
Yep.
and all
Metaverse.
these places.
Yeah.
Think back to Disney. I mean, Disney froze
Mm-hmm.
his body. His body's in stasis or whatever right now until the science catches up and is able to unfreeze him, not realizing that he's already in his final destination,
Mm-hmm.
or second to last
Second
destination.
to
The final
last. Yeah.
destination is Lake of Fire.
Yep.
So, but anyways, Lauren, thank you for being on. Do you want to stay on for Q&A? I know you
Yeah.
have.
I can
What's it?
I can stay on for probably another 15 and then I gotta hop because I gotta work this
Okay.
evening. But yeah, we can hop on.
All right. I think if Sir Pierce Seville's put this on Discord, I can pull it off of Discord here.
Sweet. This was fun today. I had a great
Oh man,
time.
there's a lot.
I
It's it's
know.
it's.
I know.
I
I was
feel like
actually thinking, are we going to get through this whole all these papers that I have together? And we did, but look at the time.
you're much more organized than I am. I have like
I have to be, or I'd be a hot mess, man. I love it. He's got like
this is me.
napkins. I have to, otherwise, because I just have so much in my brain and so much things, so many pieces of like websites and all that stuff. If I don't have it in some kind of outline, I'll be all over the place. And I already talk a lot and talk fast. So,
All right, let's see here. This is from Melissa Bourne.
okay.
Um, Question: Has Musk and or any of the tech cronies vested in organoid intelligence? Do you see the I guess OI playing a role in prophecy? I understand that you will be speculating. Thank you. I've heard that term before. I'm not 100% sure what that is, but um, do you know what that is, or do you want me to?
Quick search. It's a
Yeah.
new
Well,
field of study that uses 3D brain cell cultures to develop biological computing systems. The goal of OI is to create systems that are as flexible, efficient, and robust as cells and organs. So, I mean, I would say, here's what I would say. What was her name?
um, Melissa Bourne.
Melissa, what I would say is that any tech that they can get their hands on, right, and get out into the public to push the glorification piece that we talked about at the beginning of this, if it can somehow make man a greater being, somehow they will be involved in it somehow. So I'd have to do some research. I don't know what if they're involved with that right now, but I don't think these guys are going to get their hands off of any sort of piece of technology that would help further this agenda and where it's going.
There's a I'm looking it up right now because I did I don't know that I did a program on it. I think I mentioned it in one of my presentations, maybe Ghost in the Machine, one of those things. Um they use mushrooms, wetware. I think it's called wetware, but they are putting I think it's using mushrooms for technology, using and it's weird. It's completely bizarre, but think about it this way. If you have like a petri dish that has little mazes. It's like a maze set up in there inside of the petri dish, and you have a source for nutrients that mushroom or no, I'm sorry, fungi would eat, or it's what they eat or whatever. You put that at the center, and then you watch how that fungi moves through the maze to get, and it will find the most efficient way to get to that
Whoa.
nutrient. And I'm blanking on what the name of it is. Uh, Fungus. I don't even know. It's called fungus technology or something. I don't know. I'm
That's
gonna just type
crazy.
that in. But
That's
yeah,
wild.
and so they could use that. They do that for looking at a city. You could lay a city out on a grid, a map or whatever with the roads and all that kind of stuff. And then if you want to plan, they would put the fungus. They would overlay the giant petri dish kind of thing on top of this thing, and they would put the nutrients in the middle, and they would
Yeah.
find the most efficient ways that this fungi would use to get to that nutrients or sugar or whatever it is, water.
Weird.
And you could see that and so then you could take that map of that, and it's already overlaid on top of the city, and figure out where the most efficient routes. So they're doing it in smaller ways and for limited type of things right now, but they're using organic material to calculate and to do things. And so there's a tapping into that as well.
I'm gonna have
And
to
I'm
go down
sure at
that
the
rabbit hole.
yeah, it's
Thanks, Pete. I didn't need any more rabbit holes to go down, but okay.
uh I I have to look it up again. Maybe
All
somebody in the
right.
chat remembers me talking about it, but yeah, so that's certainly something that they're going to use nature in order
Oh, of course.
to try and not digitize it, but put rope it in somehow that it's utilized into whatever the technology we're going to be getting into.
Sweet.
Okay, so that's from Melissa.
Okay.
Thank you, Melissa. From
Yes, thanks.
KG, it says a question with nanotechnology and drone technology. Do you think that they could track us all easily now, or in the B system that what everybody having their own spy drone, nano drone assigned to everyone?
Oh, I think they can
Maybe
do it
read.
now.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah, there's
yeah.
no doubt they can do it now. It'll just be all put together without any malfunctions, if you will, in that time. Because the AC is going to need to be able to check on any one individual like that.
Yeah, I think the Mark does that too as well. The Mark
Yep.
plugs them into the system, and at any time you could figure out where somebody is, what they're doing, etc. And so the people that are not plugged in then come under the thumb of the global surveillance system that they have in place through drones. So it's layered, right? You have at the space level, or right where there are atmosphere meets space satellites, low Earth orbit satellites that feed information to other surveillance drones that may work over particular regions, and then those feed into the other type of camera systems, surveillance systems, and not just like street cameras, but like ring cameras on your doorknob or your
Yeah.
front door, the ring cameras, cameras on your car, cameras on your laptops, on any kind of technology that can have surveillance capabilities put into it. And it doesn't even have to be a camera. It could be if the Wi-Fi. Remember, I talked about how they can figure out where somebody is in the house based on Wi-Fi. So
Yep.
if you think about that movie, Eagle Eye,
That was a great movie.
um,
That's a really good
yeah,
movie.
Eagle
Yeah.
Eye, they're in this safe room where it's supposedly completely electronics free. They don't because they have this powerful AI system around them. So it's supposed to be a safe room where that is completely you can't hear anything in or outside of this safe room. But what this AI system does is there's a glass of water on the table,
Mm-hmm.
and when every time somebody talks, it ripples that water in the glass a little bit. And based off of that ripple, they're able to begin to put together the conversation. And it's absolutely insane. But yeah, I mean, there's not going to be anywhere to hide.
No.
Um, um,
No. No.
but I think it's bad now. It's going to be a million times worse in that time period.
Multiply it.
Okay, so this is from Pharaoh Harrell. Question: do you think this system will be more of an augmented reality? There's two questions. So augmented reality, yes and no. I think it'll be both. I think it'll be
Yeah.
so interwoven into everyday life that it's going
Mm-hmm.
to be just during that time it'll become the normal to be walking into a place and you see a holographic image of something pop up. Hey, welcome to blah blah blah.
Yes. Do
But
you
it
guys, this is
hologram.
probably a bad example. Well, it's not really a bad example, but how many of you guys are Back to the Future fans in here? So I think of Back to the Future 2. It's the most terrible movie of the trilogy. But that technology back then, I think some of those things, because they had holographs and that, like all of that stuff. But I think of that like it's so weird. It's like futuristic, but it's not. I think it'll be a lot like that. So I always think of sometimes when I'm talking about this stuff, I'm like, it's so Back to the Future too, except it's on steroids. But I think it'll be a little bit of both because they obviously do want to push the augmented reality. Meta is really big on like the metaverse and even just having like your own what are they called? I
Virtual
hate when that.
reality.
Yeah, thank you. The virtual reality pieces. So yeah, I think it'll be a combo of both. I think people probably won't be able to tell what's real life and what's not. I think there's going to be some of that dynamic in that time.
Yeah, so right now online, if it's digital, if you're watching something digitally or looking at a picture or listening to some, it's getting to the point with all the deep fake technology to really
Yep.
begin to like you have to triple, quadruple check things from multiple sources to see if what that is really true. And I think what the question is that going to bleed over into real life? And I think it will too. I
Yep.
think through a holographic technology, drones, etc. We're seeing a little bit of that now with all the mystery drones and the
Yep.
plasmoids and the orbs and stuff all over the place.
Go look
And
up
not even to
Project
mention,
Bluebeam, guys. Project
yeah,
Bluebeam. Go.
not even just that, but I think that once the rapture occurs, that veil is going to be torn open, and now
Yes,
the supernatural realm will be able to interact in a very much more visible way than anything we've seen over the last 2,000 years. And so
absolutely.
I do think that that demons, monsters, etc., like that stuff's going to be very much prevalent. And I made a point the other day, and I feel like I left it kind of half done. So let me go back real fast to answer that question.
Yeah.
I was talking about dogmen, Bigfoot, all that kind of stuff, and
Yeah,
how
yeah.
that this resurgence of all of these cryptids or whatever, these demonic forces, Nephilim, whatever you want to call them, are coming back all over the place, right? Hauntings, ghosts,
Yep.
etc. We're getting a glimpse of what um, is coming, right? So for a lot of the post-trib people, they bought their land. If they're really prepared, they've already got a place off grid. They've got their bunkers built. They've got their cans of beanie weenies lined up on the shelves ready to go. But the problem is going to be that if you try and go off grid inside of the tribulation, not only is there going to be supernatural, or not only is there going to be the natural world, I think it's going to become very hostile to humans. Animals that normally wouldn't have anything to do with humans would now attack a human.
Hmm.
Like if you see a buck running across the path that you're walking down, a buck or deer will just run another way. But inside the 70th week, I think those things will turn and charge at you and try and kill you because they don't
Hmm.
trust you. That you're the enemy. You're the ultimate threat to them. This is kind of the ultimate culmination of the change that we saw during the change after the flood with the Noahic covenant. With the animals were docile before the flood. Now they're afraid of man. Now that fear is going to turn into hostility toward
Yeah.
man. Not only that, so nature's working against you, but you also have the fallen angels. You have the supernatural realm, basically making the woods, the mountains, any place you want to hide. Basically, you can't hide there. You can't go there because of these things that are there,
No.
and it's
Yeah,
going to
it's true.
force you back into channelize you back into where people are supposed to be camped into, in these little small places to control. And that's how the supernatural world will be able to drive people. And you're not going to just be able to camp out in the woods for, 10 years and hide. No, these things are going to drive you out of there. So unless you're protected by angels or protected in some supernatural way by God, you're going to be you're going to be on the run from those things, and those aren't even human.
Yeah.
Just a thought.
No,
The
yeah.
second question was what song do I play on my trailer? Uh, my buddy Jeff put that together. I picked out an old Appalachian kind of hymnal thing. I don't even remember where I got it or whoever, but I gave him that sound bite to it and he put it to the video. But I can't honestly remember who wrote that song or whatever. But let me dig back into that. I can find it. It's gonna have to go back and look through emails and stuff to get the song. Okay, James Wells asked, question, are you going to be able to see, or are we going to be able to see what we actually look like in our glorified bodies? I think we'll just know what we look like. I don't think I don't think there's going to be any type of, because we're going to be not only just in our changed physical bodies, but we're going to be we'll be sinless at that point. We won't have that sin nature anymore. So whether I'm 6'9" and I have long flowing blonde mullet with a big handlebar mustache and big sideburns, like which I want,
Oh my goodness.
I don't think that I'm going to care. Like, it's not going to be a big deal to me.
I'm gonna
I'm
care.
joking.
I'm gonna care if you look like that.
I joke about it now, but in our without a sin nature, it's not going to. I don't think we're really going to care what we look
Right.
like. But all right, thank you, James. Annette asked question. I would like to hear more all of the reasons that 2025 is such a pivotal year spiritually, or spiritually. So Matt talked about the year of snake. I looked that up. I look at that every year, anyways, because I'm just curious and I used to work at a Chinese restaurant, so I used to see all the Chinese zodiac all the time, and so I kind
Hmm.
of I don't know. It's just something I look at, but I don't build my life off it, obviously. But I'm just curious as to what year we're in. So this is the year of the snake. I think it's a year of the wood snake or the metal snake or the fire snake. I can't remember
Hmm.
what snake it is. But Matt did a video on that,
He did.
a short on that. I think it was on Instagram. I'm not
Yeah.
sure,
Yeah, he's off
but
of TikTok. So his stuff is mainly going to X and Instagram. But if you want to know more about that, Matt and I dove hardcore into that 2 weeks ago. So Friday the
hmm.
10th, I think. No, that was last week, Friday the 3rd. So go back to my channel, go into the live videos under Voices of Certainty in the last video with Matt. So it was the one or Josh Peck. We talked a lot about our upcoming things that we were watching for 2025, and I hear into the occult. I am putting together a video. I just don't have all of the pieces done. I may just end up doing it as a live instead of a pre-record, but I do want to talk about some of the stuff that's going on with New Age, the occult, and 2025 and put it all in a video because it's really pertinent right now. I've been on lives recently or had people on my channel. I haven't had a chance to like sit down and put an outline like I did today together for that, but that's coming. But for that person that asked that question, that video from Matt and I will help for sure.
I'll link it in the show notes.
Cool. Yep.
Um, okay.
Okay,
You have to go, or
I'll give you, can we do 3 more minutes? I want to stay, but like I know I got to go and get dry,
yeah,
do
it's
the
not,
things for work. Yeah.
I got you.
Okay.
Carol Vay. What
I love
about
Carol.
Carol? Carol's going
I
to be on
love
my
Carol.
program on. Yeah, I do too. She'll be on with me on the 30th. And Carol, I need
Cool.
to the double check with you. I think we just kind of threw that as a mark on the wall. I don't know if we're still going to do the 30th, but I'll email you after this and solidify the date that we actually do our program together. So let me follow up with her on that. Um, what about babies born during the tribulation whose parents allow them to receive the mark of the beast? That's why I have a huge issue with children going into the tribulation, because if a child who is under the age of accountability, which I know the Bible doesn't list that out, but we do know that Paul talks about that there was a time in his younger life when he didn't know he was alive, and then he came to understand the law. He died. He would not physically die, but he spiritually died.
Mm-hmm.
Read that in Romans 7. Um, I don't. So I think because God is long suffering and that none should perish, if somebody is going to be put in that situation where they're given the mark of the beast and they don't even understand what it is, let alone. I think the taking the mark of the beast and worshiping and all that, it has to be a conscious choice that you make, that you decide to do,
Yeah.
regardless of the consequences. And that's where you're considered irredeemable at that sense, right? Um, I think that if I were just to guess and speculate, if we know there are children born inside of the 70th week, according to Matthew 24,
Mm-hmm.
they're babies or they're nursing, they're either pregnant or nursing is all the mention. We don't see any other children mentioned anywhere else inside of the 70th week itself, other than that one little snippet there in Matthew 24, I think verses 18, 19, somewhere in there. Uh, I think that the mark, whatever this thing is, I think it's not going to work with children. For some reason. It's just not going to work. So you
Yeah,
have to be above a
I
certain
don't
age
see
to
that.
get it.
Yeah, I just don't see that even there being an opportunity for people to somehow get this mark that's going to it's eternal damnation. I don't see how that's even plausible. Because the Bible is, you know what I mean? Like the Bible's so clear that if you take this, you're done for. So I just don't even see how it would even be applicable. Does it make sense? Am I saying
Yeah.
that? Okay.
Yeah.
So,
And I'm going to do a standalone program on the age of accountability. I've talked about it quite a bit over the
yeah,
years.
I know we've even discussed it in a couple of other shows last we did. We did,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I'll do a standalone program on that. I know most Bible prophecy teachers don't necessarily touch on it
Yeah.
because the Bible is for the most part silent about
Silent.
the age of
Mm-hmm.
accountability. But if we look at the nature and character of God, he's long suffering. He doesn't want anybody to perish. We know that the statements from Jesus in his time on the earth in his first advent, that talking about the children, let the children come unto me, for such is the kingdom. He has a big place in his heart for children.
Yeah.
Where does that age stop? Is it a simply a mark on the wall? Well, in the Old Testament, it was a mark on the wall, and that mark was
Mm-hmm.
20 years old. That was the dividing line between child
Mm-hmm.
and an adult,
Yeah.
fully responsible for your actions, not fully responsible.
Yeah.
I didn't set that. I didn't write that. That's what just the Bible says. So that's all I'm using, because the Bible, for the most part, doesn't mention it anywhere else in terms of a particular age range. But we do know biologically that the human brain doesn't fully develop into your early 20s. So it seems fitting, or it seems to fit nicely with the age that we see in Exodus and Numbers, of the age of 20 being the dividing line, because your prefrontal cortex is the last part of your brain that is fully kind of coming into its own. And I get it. I'm 50, I'm still learning, right? So you can learn at any age, but where your brain is kind of like at your 100%, like it's all kind of working as it should be. is the age of 20, because it's your prefrontal cortex is where you get all your higher critical skills, your higher critical thinking skills kind of comes into, and that's based off of your upbringing, that's based off your education, that's based off of your experiences, that's based off of your own biology. I mean, God could have made us fully accountable at the age of 1. I
And he
mean, he
didn't.
could have.
Yeah.
He could have
Mm-hmm.
created us that way, that by the
Right.
age of 1, I'm fully accountable for all my actions. And
Mm-hmm.
as a baby, having that ability to understand everything, right and wrong. And I
Mm-hmm.
know a lot of people love to go to the age of 13 because that's the age of the bar mitzvah and the bat
Mm-hmm.
mitzvah. The bar mitzvah, bat mitzvah is not in the Bible. It didn't even come about until like the 12th or 13th century AD. This is something that developed while the Jews were in diaspora. But we know that Jesus was at the temple teaching at the age of 12. But again, he's an exception. He is not the norm. He's God incarnate. So
Mm-hmm.
he could have done that at the age of 5. That doesn't mean
Mm-hmm.
the age of accountability is the age of 5, but he is Jesus, right? We have that in there for a particular reason. I don't know, but I also know that we are flawed humans, and we build our whole justice system off of this idea of what you do as an adult. There's a different standard for what adults do than what children do. Now I get it. There are teenagers like the Columbine kids and the others that have done horrible things. I don't have the answer for that, but I know that God has the answer for that. And whatever his standard is going to be perfect. And the one thing I will just close on this part: children, even at the age of 16, let's say, we put age limits or age fences where people can do certain things at certain ages. Driver licenses, big, pretty normal thing. For us, it's at the age of 16. A lot of other countries, it's the age of 18, right? But that's the time, because we try to match that up with when your motor skills kind of get to that point where you're able to do and think and be able to multitask as humans should be able to do, which is driving, right? Driving requires a lot of multitasking. And so that's the kind of the bare minimum there is age 16, or if you're working on a farm or whatever, maybe 15 or 14, but you're not allowed to drive down, I-35 and get into rush hour traffic at that age. You wouldn't even want
You
to do
wouldn't
that.
want to. Yeah.
I don't want to do that at 50.
No.
Like I,
Yeah.
so point is that the thing about teenagers is that the reason why I believe it's as high as it is because yes, a 16-year-old, 15-year-old, 14-year-old, they know the difference between right and wrong, but they don't really understand consequences, right? Think of back when you were a 16-year-old, how many dumb things you did. I did a ton of, my mom's in the chat. She could probably tell you a million dumb things I did as a kid or as a teenager
She's gonna
because you
start
don't
outing
think
you,
through the
Pete.
consequences.
Right.
Yeah. You don't think about your consequences because you haven't been alive long enough to really have any experience to base that off of. So you
I don't
do
know.
it feels good, and then you get in
My
trouble
dad
or
ran a pretty
whatever.
tight ship, so, I was a pretty good kid. But I did get married very young, so there's that, you know? But
33 when I got married. So
oh yeah, no, I was
okay,
18. I was
you got
gonna
to go.
say, yeah, I do. I was just gonna real quick. We mentioned earlier too, kids are gonna be in the tribulation because there will be a point of people having babies and stuff. But I just think it might end up being a scenario where the mom or the dad takes the mark to be able to buy and sell for that family. I don't think it's gonna be like I said, I just don't see a scenario where someone is getting that mark on them that has no idea what it is or choice or any of I don't see that scenario at all. So that's my 2 cents. But I do have to hop off. I don't want to. I would love to. But Pete, thank you for having me on today. And P.S., we are literally a year out from I think it was the first time that I was on your channel. I saw something pop up. So I think it was January 21st of 2020. So it might have been 2023. I don't know. But I saw it the other day and I was like, wow, it was out. I mean, I've been on your channel since, but like the first time that you had me on. But that came up on my something or other the other day, and I was like, wow, that's crazy. So anyway, but
Oh, we won't wait
yeah.
as long next time to have you
Okay.
back on, and,
Yeah,
and
same. I
hopefully
need to
we're
have
not
you
even
back
here.
on. No, I know, right?
Yeah.
If we're still here, yeah. So, but thank you for having me on today. And guys, I so enjoyed seeing all you guys in the chat. And yeah, that was great. So I do have to get to work, but I'll catch everybody later, okay?
All right.
Bye.
Good to see you again.
Yeah,
Take,
you
take
too.
care.
Bye.
Bye. All right. Thank you, Carol, for that question. And let's see, we've got Gloria Minix. It keeps coming to mind where God said nothing would be impossible to them. He confused their language. That block has now mostly been overcome. He will stop them again. Rapture, maybe. Yeah, so if you think about what I mentioned earlier about how God institutes something, right? And then Satan comes along and tries to corrupt it. Well, I think with the case of recognizing that people, all of humanity being under one banner, under one language, in one location, under one leader is a terrible idea because we're corruptible. And Satan and the fallen angels are far more, they're far smarter than us, stronger than us. They are they they would just run roughshod all over us. And humanity would have, if God hadn't separated people at Babel, I think humanity would have ended even before Christ came because we would have already destroyed ourselves or done something so irreparable there would be no recovering at that point. So God did that as an act of mercy to prevent us from destroying ourselves. And I think on the same vein is that not only in the last 2000 years, we talk about the restrainer a lot, the restrainer being the Holy Spirit working through the churches to, because we're sealed by the Holy Spirit, right, until the day of redemption, working through the churches to slow the spread of evil and to be the salt and light in the world. And I think with regard to the unification of mankind, God also instituted Genesis 9, right? That was the creation of human government, or what would become the creation of human government. The need to police ourselves is the basic foundation of almost any society. There has to be some kind of law and order, and that's what this human government provides. There has to be some kind of rules, or else you wouldn't have a civilization. You would just have chaos and anarchy everywhere. So Satan takes that and corrupts that. But then what does God also do? God also selects and picks the leaders, causes them to rise, causes them to fall, right? We see that in Daniel chapter 2. We see that in Acts 17:26. So God not only picks the leaders and the rulers or who's going to rule and come to power and do because they're accomplishing his agenda and his mission, but also that he sets the times and the boundaries of the nations, right? He's the one who allows how big the United States is going to be, or how big Russia is going to be, or how long Russia is going to last, or the Soviet Union, or China, or Taiwan, or whatever. You know, you pick a country, and God is the one that's picking and setting those boundaries for them. So I think when we're back to this point, and a lot of folks have made mention of this over the last 20 years, that we're coming back into that time of kind of like Babel-esque, where the boundaries that God put in place are no longer, we've able to overcome them. And so one of the things that's interesting about Genesis 11, and you guys probably heard me talk about this quite a bit over the years, but Genesis 11 in verse, I want to say it's verse 8. Let me double check myself here. So God speaking in the plurality of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, another early example of the triune nature of God. Verse 7, it says, "Come, let us go down and confuse their language, that they may not understand one another's speech." So the Lord scattered them abroad over their scattered them abroad from there over the face of all the earth, and they ceased building the city. Now, why did he do that? Because it's in verse 6. And the Lord said, "Indeed, the people are one, and they all have one language, and this is what they begin to do. Now nothing that they propose to do will be withheld from them." When mankind is unified in language and in purpose, there's not anything we can't do according to God's word here in Genesis 11:6. So God put that boundary in place to keep us from destroying ourselves, thousands of years ago. Imagine if the Roman Empire had nuclear weapons, or Genghis Khan, or Hitler, or uh, you know, whatever. We could go the rabbit trail through all the different scenarios that this could turn out very poorly for humanity. But if this technology had been accessible to tyrants and dictators and despots from ages past, it's a large, it's kind of like that fictional scenario where people are asking the question, what would have happened if Germany won in World War II? I think there's even a show about it on Amazon. I've never watched it, but you think about these alternative history kind of things. Well, it would have been very bad. It would have been very bad. We would not be. we would not even probably be here if God had not separated us. But you're right, Gloria. We've gotten to that point now where language is no longer a barrier, not just through technology, but generally speaking, English is the global language. You think about the U.S. dollar being the global reserve currency. English is the world's global reserve language because you can go anywhere in the world and somebody speaks English. Because not only do you have the last I don't know, 100 years of American influence in the world. But then you had to go back 200 years before that. You had the British. The British were the world's superpower for a very long time, and they dominated the world. So between the English and or between the British and the Americans, the most useful language to have in any kind of place is English. So we're kind of getting back to that point now where the internet has made it possible, technology has made it possible to be able to communicate in any language we want to. So that's also kind of a sign of the times that we're coming up on the end. Remember, if we're united in purpose and have the same language, what are we seeing today? We are very much trying to tear apart the building blocks of reality through CERN. We're trying to uncover the building blocks of DNA, which we're going to abuse that. We're going to because we're human. We're going to abuse that newfound technology to try and figure out how to make us live forever. All right, from Dora. The question: Did Pete? Did you or Lauren read the Baron Trump novels? I didn't read the novels. I read a summation of it. I do think it's fascinating that you have a guy named Trump that is the president right now, having undergone everything he's gone through over the last 9 years. And then his son is Barron Trump, which is goes back to a novel. I don't know if that was intentional or not. Maybe Donald Trump knew about the story and thought, oh, let's name him Barron. That's probably the most likely case, but I don't know. I haven't read it, and then even me reading the summation was about a year ago, so I don't even remember. I'll have to go back and look at it. Again, Melissa, is it possible with the decline in fertility rates that only the Jews will have children? Yeah, I thought about that too. We don't hear about other cultures doing this. And there may be children may be greatly discouraged in this kingdom that's coming, this beast kingdom. It may be illegal to have children. I mean, we just don't know. But people may be barren in the sense that you know it's not lost on me that from the 1900s through to today, how many children have been aborted around the world, and not just in the United States. I think in the U.S. it's about 60 million. But if you were to take the global totals, I mean, you're easily over a billion people have been aborted around the world for the last 100 whatever years. So ever since eugenics became a thing, and even before that, you had child sacrifice. You had also a lot of deaths, children dying in the womb just because of disease and other unsanitary conditions, etc. So I do think that may be a curse. Barrenness may be a curse, and the Jews may be the only ones that do have children or are able to have children. That's a good question. Thank you, Melissa. Annette, since technology is just a tool, how do watch and make we are okay? How do what how do we okay? How do we make sure we're protected and not demonically deceived since demons can possess technological devices? Well, it's not even necessarily with technology. I think even if I had no technology in my house, I'm still susceptible to demonic oppression or possession if I'm not a believer. Anybody is. You're going to be influenced by something. Um, Even if a guy lives in a log cabin all by himself with no electronic anything, he can still be possessed or oppressed by demonic forces. So we have to be born again, which means that we admit we're a sinner. We admit that we cannot save ourselves. We admit that we're not God, right? I mean, that's the kind of the most basic starting point is like, I can't save myself. I recognize that when I die, I'm going to go somewhere. And I don't have it within myself to save myself. So I have to look at something or someone else to save me, which is why other religions around the world give you a list of do's and don'ts. If you're Muslim, you got to pray 5 times a day. You got to do this. You can't eat that. You got to wear this. You got to make a trip to Mecca. All the do's and don'ts. If you're Catholic, you have to do this. You have to do this. You have to do this. Mormonism, Jehovah Witnesses, et cetera, et cetera. Every religion in the world has a list of do's and don'ts. Christianity is unique in that our salvation is a free gift. All we have to do is accept it and believe it. So we admit we're a sinner. We believe in the Lord Jesus Christ, and we trust in him and his finished work on the cross, his shed blood on the cross for our salvation, to save us, because we recognized that that is what saves us, right? That is the only thing that can cleanse us. And I was in church yesterday, and it was I visited an old Baptist church that I'd seen around town. I'd never been in it before, and we were singing in it very old school. We had hymnals, very, very old school. And they didn't have any music up. They didn't have any screens up on the wall or anything like that. It was just, I turned to page 22 or whatever that was. And it was, are we washed in the blood of the Lamb? In fact, I took a photo, just reminded of it. I just took a photo of that. I don't know why I took a photo of it. I just thought, man, this is cool, man. I haven't seen a hymnal in forever. Um, and so that got me thinking, like, if I were, I'm sorry, this was "It Is Well with My Soul," but the first song that we read was "Are You Washed in the Blood of the Lamb?" Um, and that got me thinking, like, okay, if I'm not a Christian, I'm reading that, it must sound incredibly barbaric or even bizarre for the non-Christian to think about blood being something that cleanses us. We typically think about blood. If you have a bloody nose, it gets on your shirt, it's kind of there forever. Getting this blood stains out is hard. But Christ's blood, when we're washing the blood of the Lamb, what that means is that the blood that he shed that God in the flesh came down, lived as a man, a perfect life, and died a sinless death. And he did that because uh, innocent blood has to be shed for the remission of sins. The Jews did that under Judaism using animal sacrifices, but it wasn't a permanent solution. It was a temporary solution, and they had to do it every year, as long as the temple was standing, right? But once Christ came and died for our sins, that was a one-time thing. He didn't have to do it again. And when you read through Hebrews, it paints that out very, very clearly. So his sacrifice is forever, and he doesn't do it again. He's not doing it for the angels. He's not doing it for augmented humans or humans plus or whatever you want to call it, evolved humans. He's did it for mankind. And when we believe that and we call on his name to save us, that is when you're born again. The Holy Spirit enters you and seals you until the day of redemption. Read Ephesians chapter 1, just read that. Ephesians chapter 4, 2 Corinthians chapter 1, and you're sealed by the Holy Spirit. And that sealing is like the earnest, it's like a down payment on us, right? And when I bought my house here, we had to put a down payment, right? You put your earnest money down to hold it, to let the realtors know, hey, I'm serious about purchasing this. I'm not going to back out of this deal now because I've already put my own money and blood, sweat, and tears into this earnest money now that represents my desire to purchase this place. That is what the Holy Spirit does for us inside, sealing us until the day of redemption. Now, when you get inside of the book of Revelation, when you get past chapter 6, from 6 onward, talking about the time of Daniel's 70th week, you don't see the church there. The church, the ecclesia, that's mentioned 19 times in the first 3 chapters. Then you see the 2 throne room scenes where you have the elders who are the church. The elders are not angels. The elders are not something else. They're the born again, blood bought believers. And then the rest of the saints are there, the Christians, right? Well, when you get through the rest of the 70th week, when it starts happening, the seal judgments, the trumpet judgments, bowl judgments, there is that word hagios, is the saints. uh, Saints is not exclusive to the church. The church, you can be a saint today in the church. We're considered saints from in a certain regard because we are born again believers. But there were Old Testament saints, saints that came, that were, the Bible mentions these saints back before Christ ever came. So they are not the church, and there'll be saints that come upon the earth, or convert to Christ after the rapture. They're tribulation saints. Again, they're not the church. The church is unique. We're a unique uh, uh, time period a group of believers that are born again, sealed by the Holy Spirit. We don't see people being sealed we don't see believers being sealed, these saints being sealed in the in Revelation in the tribulation. The only people that are mentioned being sealed specifically are the 144,000 from the 12 tribes of Israel. And I'm sure that other believers, if you read the Left Behind books, other people had like the seal of God on their forehead. That may be the case. It doesn't list that out specifically. The only people are specifically mentioned as being sealed is the 144,000. So Revelation 13:7 says that the Antichrist is given power to overcome the saints, to kill them, wipe them out, make martyrs. We see two huge groupings of martyrs in Revelation chapter 6 in the fifth seal judgment, or fifth seal. And then we see saints being martyred, or at least another, seems like another larger group there in Revelation chapter 7 that no man could count, from all tribes, tongues, and nations. So just because it says the word saints doesn't mean that they are Christians or that they are the church. The church is exclusively unique to this time period that we're living in right now. So, but when you become born again, you're sealed by the Holy Spirit. And let me put it this way too. Salvation is, you could think about it in three different tenses, right? You have the justification, that when we become saved, we become justified before God, because now God, even though he sees me, the flawed sinner, that does not deserve heaven, but now he sees me covered in the blood of his son. And his son is holy, righteous, sinless, perfect, the perfect Lamb of God, the perfect sacrifice. And now I'm covered with that. And now God sees me, not just me, but he sees me made acceptable to God, given the righteousness of God. Not that I am not the righteousness of God right now, but it's Christ's righteousness that's covering me, that makes me acceptable to God. And at that point, um, once you're saved, it's a one-time thing. But the minute I get saved, and let's say I get saved at the age of 6, which I did, and then I live to be 80, that whole time from the age of 6 all the way to 80, I am in the process of what's called sanctification. I'm in the process of maturing in my faith. Some people mature in their faith. Some people stay on the milk all their whole life. Some people go from the milk, stay on milk for 15 years like I did or longer, and then they get onto the meat, and the meat is growing in the faith, growing and maturing in the faith, and exercising the gifts that God's given us. And then and that's a lifelong thing, right? That's a lifelong event. And then the last thing is that the glorification aspect of it, that our salvation is not just in and of itself something that happens after we die. Like our glorification is not something that happens after we die. The glorification will happen at the rapture of the church. And that's where those who have already died will come back with Christ, and those who are alive, we will be translated from mortal to immortal, right? From corruptible to incorruptible. Those who have already died in Christ, their spirit will come back and their bodies will be reconstituted from wherever their bodies were buried or destroyed or wherever they are, and they will be put back together into a perfect glorified body that is immortal, incorruptible. That means we won't have the sin nature anymore. We won't age. We won't get blood handles. We won't get diseases or aches or pains or whatever. We're basically in the glorified form for the rest of eternity, right? And then that's the three tenses of salvation: justification, sanctification, and then glorification. Now, you could look into things like the predestination. I don't even go into that route, but God has already known who is going to accept Christ in this particular dispensation we live in. He knew that from before the creation of the world. Again, read Ephesians chapter 1. He already knew who would. He doesn't force us to do that. I think that and this is just a thought I had in a little bit of a rabbit trail. I was reading in church yesterday. We were going through the life of Jacob, and that brought me to this. It reminded me of this point of the passage. I think it's in Romans where it says that Jacob I've loved and Esau I've hated. Um, and I've always wondered that, because when you read that passage there in uh, uh, Genesis, I think it's 34, 35, 36, somewhere in there, where Jacob is meeting up with Esau after all these years. and Esau, Jacob thinks that Esau is going to kill him because he's showing up with 400 dudes, and and Jacob's got his like cattle and his family and his kids and his wives, and he's like, oh man, I'm a sitting duck. This guy's he's gonna want blood. But what does Esau do? He runs up and just falls on his neck and just and kisses him and hugs him, and it's like, man, it's so good to see you again. So Esau, from that perspective, doesn't seem like that bad of a guy. And it got me thinking because I think Esau, because he was the firstborn of the twins, rejected or did not even care about his blessing from his father Isaac, and it was nothing to him. But it was supposed to go to him. But he's like, whatever, I'll trade it for a bowl of soup. And I think that's what God hated, this indifference or flippance of the gift that God was about to bestow on him. Instead, he rejected it for a bowl of soup. And then Esau, or not Esau, Isaac ends up, or not Isaac, Jacob ends up taking it. And and he's a little bit of a trickster, whatnot, but God already knew that, but God was not going to change Esau's mind because Esau was about to break. I think he was breaking some kind of a pattern of the firstborn receiving the blessing. He broke that over a bowl of soup, whereas instead he goes to Jacob then, right, who then becomes Israel, right? Anyways, that's a long rabbit trail, but that's why I kind of think God hated him for that, because he thought so little of his own salvation or his blessing, that all of this stuff was going to come through, and he just, whatever. And just a thought. I'm not saying that that's the way it is. Why does God hate Esau? My thoughts on it. Okay. Let's see here. Tego Arcana Die. Man, you got to tell me what that name means. Question: what's significance of BB's agreement with Big Pharma, Pfizer, to use Israel Jews to be the world's foremost DNA gene research using Israel's database and tech? I honestly don't know that much about what Bibi Netanyahu has done with Big Pharma. I know that there was, they were compliant, I guess, in those regards, but um, couldn't tell you. Don't even know. But I will say this, that Israel, we have to pray and support Israel because God says that I will bless those who bless you and curse those who curse you. And I think he's speaking to Israel, the Jews, the Jewish people. Um, that doesn't mean that everything they do is going to be right, or everything that the political leaders do is going to be biblically correct or right, or whatever. So they're flawed humans just like we are. They need Jesus Christ just like we do. Um, but we have to pray for them because God is working through Israel, and that's how all of this stuff is going to come to an end. And Christ is the King of the Jews. He is the King of Kings, Lord of Lords, but he's going to be ruling and reigning from the throne of David in Jerusalem, beginning in the millennial kingdom. So Israel is always going to be special to God because all the nations of the world, I think, if you're a Michael Heiser fan, he talks about the divine council and how I think it's in Deuteronomy that I don't know if I subscribe to all of this necessarily. I disagree with Michael Heiser on a few things, but I was never that big into the divine council. My point is that it seems like, according to his argument, that God gave all of the nations to these fallen angels, right? These divine council folks that end up becoming their demigods and whatnot, false gods. But he kept Israel for himself. And through whatever reasons, God has chosen them as a people that he's going to use to bring not only the blessings that God wants to bestow upon mankind through through Abraham, the Bible, the prophets, the apostles. Jesus Christ is the key here is that he was a Jew, right, from the tribe of Judah, and through him all of mankind would be blessed. So why did God choose the Jewish people over, say, the Filipinos or the Chinese or the Americans or whatever? I don't know. I don't know why them. In fact, Moses talks about this in Deuteronomy, calling them stiff-necked people. And and anyways, another rabbit trail. But um, we are to pray for Jerusalem, pray for the peace of Jerusalem. We need to pray for the Jewish people that they would come to Christ, and that we need to be an ally to them and understand that they don't do everything perfectly, just like the United States does not do everything perfectly. Every government in existence has never done everything perfectly, and they've all done things antithetical to their own civilian populations and to their own well-being. So I think in that regard, as a from a human government standpoint, yeah, they're going to make mistakes and they're going to do dumb things. I think there has been, this is before obviously October 7th, 2023, but there was such a strong desire to fit in and to become part of something because they'd been isolated for so long and they'd been persecuted and they'd undergone the Holocaust and the diaspora and the pogroms and the expulsions and everything that they'd undergone for 2,000 years. I think there was an overwhelming desire for them to kind of go along so that they aren't the object of the world's wrath like they had been since October 7th. And I think since October 7th, they don't care. They're just going to do what they got to do to, because never again, they're never going to let that sort of thing happen again. And that had been their mantra since the Holocaust, but they let their guard down prior to October 7th, and the radical barbarians and Hamas had took advantage of it. Their enemies took advantage of that moment of not weakness, but just indifference or not paying attention, apathy, and exploited it. And it cost the lives of 14, 1,500 Jews that were brutally killed, raped, um, uh, taken hostages, tortured, just the most horrific things that happened during that day and since. And I think they don't care anymore. I think they are going to do what's best for them, and that's the mindset that's changed in with what I've seen within Israel. And I think you have to have a guy like Bibi Netanyahu who trusted Trump, right? And Trump was there at the beginning of COVID, and I think he was just trying to be a team player. But I don't. Would they still do that now? I don't think so. I think everybody, the world's learned their lesson since then. At least I hope so. Dora, this is for Lauren. Do you have all the health stuff on your watch? Do you think they're accurate? Yeah, I mean, I had an Apple Watch too. I break them. I've broken two already because I walk like Bigfoot or something. And when I walk, I swing wide and I smash them against the wall. So I've broken two of my Apple Watches and a Fitbit, just smashing it, just walking, and I not paying attention where my arms are swinging, and I boom, cracked the face of it. But yeah, it has your heartbeat, your resting, your pulse rate, your the steps you take, and I'm sure whatever you can configure it to, I'm sure it does. And yeah, it's going to track everywhere you go. And interestingly enough, a lot of the not a lot, but there was when I was in Afghanistan, I was in a base called Salerno, Fob Salerno, which was on the border of Pakistan in what we call Regional Command East. So if you look at Afghanistan, I don't even know if you could pull the city because the city Salerno is, or that valley there is pretty small. But it's as far east as you can go without going into Pakistan. But we had an army base there, and then right across from us was a CIA base called Clark. And the funny thing about that is that you had CIA contractors and mercs or whatever that trying to stay in shape, so they're running the perimeter of this base and they're wearing their Fitbits, and somehow that information, the GPS and all that data gets leaked out somewhere, and they find out, oh, there's that secret base right there. So yeah, it reveals a whole lot of information about you. So I don't wear it, not because I'm worried about that. I mean, I'm not even worried about my DNA necessarily, because being in the army for 22 years, the government has everything on me already. They have my DNA, they have my blood. I mean, I, at this point, what does it matter? But I just don't wear them because I end up breaking all my watches accidentally. So I'm just clumsy like that, I guess. All right. Thank you, Sir Pierce Seville, for getting that. I'm going to go ahead and get ready to close up shop because I've got to take care of some stuff here at the house and then go pick up the kids from school and stuff. So let me just say, let me pull up my list again of I got my guest list is on here. So okay, so we had Lauren was on today. The 19th, I'll be on with Pastor Jason at Sunshine Church, and he was on yesterday with Lee Brainerd. So check out Sunshine Church out of New Mexico. So I'll be with them on the 19th. I'll have my Monday live on the 20th, so inauguration day, and I'm going to have on John Holler with me that day. That next day, the 21st, I'll be on with Andy Woods and live stream that day. It should be a Tuesday. And then the 30th, I will be on with Carol Bay. So the 30th is what day is that? Maybe a Friday. I can't remember. It's a Thursday, so I'll be on with Carol that day. As long as that 30th is still the day we do it, we may have to tweak it or whatever, if according per her schedule. And then in February, I will be with John Holler on the 12th doing the technocracy update. That's like a roundtable. And then the week I skipped a week. The 6th of February, I should have on Mary Danielson. She does stand up for the truth. And her and I are both big history nerds, so that'll be a fascinating conversation. I want to talk with her about the lost history of the world and like places like Atlantis. Like we know they existed, but where are they? And my theory on this, which is a little sneak peek, is that when the flood happened, so when all the water is coming down in the form of rain, you also had water coming up from underground, right? And I think that broke apart the tectonic plates to where we have it today. And I don't know that necessarily the continents floated around. I don't think that's how that works. But what I think is, and I don't believe in continental drift necessarily, but I think that there were places. If you read Genesis 1, it says the water was gathered to one place, and that tells me that the land was also in one place. And so it could be that this supercontinent then was broken up so that places that had been high or above sea level now is then dropped below sea level, and those civilizations are sunk to the bottom of the ocean, and the places that had been low are then brought up, if that makes sense. So by the time Noah lands with his family, the Earth's surface is unrecognizable at that point. I mean, he doesn't look anything like what it did before the flood. So I think there was a lowering of that. And I just read an article earlier that they're discovering all sorts of civilizations, structures, man-made things, or whatever, all at the bottom of the ocean. So that seems to lend credence to that idea. I think Atlantis, or what we call Atlantis today, or what Plato called Atlantis back in his day, is sitting in the middle of the Atlantic somewhere. Just it was just dropped to the bottom of the ocean. So that's kind of what I have. And then we have the conference in Belfast, Northern Ireland, or North Ireland, in the end of February. So I'll be there with Pastor Kurt Reed, Lee Brainerd, Troy Brewer. I think he's a pastor. I'm not sure. I don't know him. And then Pastor Gary McKibben. So, and that will be live streamed. And I think the live stream is like $9.99. So I think it should be like $10 to live stream that whole conference. So more to follow on that when that link becomes available to get the live stream for that conference there in Ireland. We'll push it out. I'll push it out. Gary will, Kurt will, Lee will, so they'll be accessible to everybody. So it's a pretty good price, though. I think it's about $10. So, anyways, thank you guys. Thank you for the super chats today. I've greatly appreciate it. Thank you, moderators, for getting the questions and for wrangling the trolls and doing the pew pew thing. Um, I want to say hello to Carol was on here. Carol Bay was here. My mom was on here, or I guess she's still on here. I think Tyler was on here. I'm not sure. I think he was on here earlier. And Vindog was here. I'd like to do another program with Vindog. So just thank you all for your time today. I appreciate your participation, and I appreciate your attention and you're just being part of this community and part of this tribe. Um, I'm greatly beyond measure. I'm blessed to just be a part of this with you guys. So I get your emails. I try to answer all the ones that I can. Some of them, if they're very lengthy and they're like a very complicated question, I'm gonna have to sit down and devote a lot of time to it. I may push that off a little bit, but I always try to get back to them. I get your letters if you're sending mail letters or whatever through PO Box 967 in Decatur. I get those. Um, I get your messages on not Yahoo, Facebook and others if you're on with me there, or Instagram or whatever. So I'm kind of moving away a little bit from Facebook. I don't use it as much as I did in the past. I kind of just post one thing and kind of walk away for a while. and then trying to do a little bit more on Instagram, but Instagram and some of these other platforms are still, I'm trying to figure them out as well. So I'm not a spring chicken anymore. But thank you guys. God bless you. And like I said, I'll see you the next time I see you, we should be on the 19th, which is a Sunday with Pastor Jason at Sunshine Church, New Mexico. So thank you. God bless and